And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
All right, guys. Good morning. Attention and roll call. We got some bosses on deck here.
That's right. Attention, roll call, everyone. Good morning. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, for me, I am in the 50th state, the upper 48, right? I'm in the state of Alaska right now, and it's 4:05 in the morning. Present for duty. I got a great round table coming for you this Friday. Marlon's with us, retired Deputy Chief Rob Lukash. They call him No Cash. And of course, the great Sal Greco. We got a great topic for you here today. What will the NYPD look like under Zohran Mamdani? So what's interesting about this is you have to say to yourself, several months ago, this was probably not a thought to anyone. Could Zohran Mamdani actually be a major player in the New York City mayoral candidate race? And the question is, he appears to be not only the front runner for the Democratic primary, but he's starting to look like a shoo-in as the winner. Unless Eric Adams gets enough support from Blue MAGA, it looks like Zohran Mamdani may be the new commander-in-chief for the NYPD. So, Marlon, let's start up with you. Let's get right to it. What are your immediate thoughts?
Yeah. So, again, good morning, guys. Good morning, chat. Thank you, guys, for joining us today. John gave us the keys to the house today, so we're gonna have a good time here, right? So my immediate thoughts are, again, we talked about a little bit about it on Wednesday that, Mamdani ran a better campaign, so it's not a surprise that he's here. But at the same time, just seeing, even though we did talk about this in other episodes, that eventually you'd see MAGA kind of coalesce and try to kind of electioneer for Adams. To me, it's a surprise that seeing how many of them are now talking about New York City and talking against Zohan and kind of making him seem like he's going to be like the end of New York. I'm a little surprised at that, but in a lot of ways, just looking at preparing for this episode, Zohan seems to me like the next de Blasio, and he seems a lot like Eric Adams 1.0 too. So let's get on with the discussion, and it's going to be fun talking about the direction that the NYPD will go under him.
I just want to say before our good retired chief goes, I just want to say good morning to John, of course, and the reason why John couldn't make it today is he's busy making shirtless videos. So he's out at the tan salon getting himself, geared up. So, John, if you're watching this, make sure you get all tanned up for your next shirtless video. So, anyway, listen, good morning, guys. Chief, what do you got, brother?
Yeah, I think we alerted every state trooper on I-95 that if you see this shirtless guy, just kind of warn him on it and let him go. All right, because we know him. He's
angry. If you see an angry guy with no shirt on.
I mean, everybody thought it was impossible, right? I mean, there was talk that maybe he was going to make it, and maybe other people were going to, Cuomo was going to pull it out or whatever. And no, he ran a really good grassroots campaign. He was on the ground, walking in Manhattan, walking everywhere. He got the crowd behind him. He got the young group behind him, right? The 25 to 45, which are the same people probably doing the demonstrations and walking around and doing nothing else in the city. So now we have to look at, what's going to happen to the NYPD? And I know we'll get into it further, but I'm a little scared. I'm a little nervous. If I was in the NYPD, I would be making some life decisions right now, whether or not to stay or go right now. But it's a tough way, and we'll see what happens. Is there hope? Yeah, I think we have hope. I think I'm sure everybody will get into it today. Sal's been pretty adamant about some of the things that could happen, and I totally agree with him. So we'll hope that it does, and let's get into it. Sal, what do you think about this great epic of political challenge?
Well, I tell you what, I know all of us here, including the entire Finance Unfiltered family, would say Eric Adams should actually step down from this race because he's got no shot. I learned this morning Andrew Cuomo is not stepping down. So Cuomo's still in this race. And just as yesterday, there's a poll that shows he's tied with Mamdani. Eric Adams is not even on this map. What you're seeing, and I broke this down on my show yesterday, this MAGA crowd, all they're doing, Eric Adams going on Fox, he's auditioning for a role in the Trump administration. His polling numbers, if he was in the primary the other night, he would have been crushed by not only Mamdani and Cuomo, but Brad Lander and Adrian Adams. That support from Adams and Adrian Adams and Brad Lander now go to Mamdani. Where is Eric Adams coming up with those votes? He can't. And if you take now, this is the most I can't believe what I'm reading. So they're begging Curtis Sliwa. There's pressure in the Jewish community calling around. Curtis Sliwa, you must step down. Just a few months ago, we saw the same thing. Joe Biden won the Democratic primary for president, and then he handed over that win to Kamala Harris, who didn't receive one vote. How did that work out for that party? She got crushed, right? So what do you think is going to happen if Curtis Sliwa, who won the primary for the Republicans, hands over that nomination to someone that not only the Republicans detest and despise, he just hands over something that he wasn't even receiving one vote? I mean, there's so many issues to go over with this. And again, to think it's the end of the world if Mamdani gets elected, Marlon alluded to it. He's just another version of de Blasio, and he's an Eric Adams 1.0. His policies are the same as Eric Adams in 2021. People are just disillusioned because they're stuck with the Trump thing. And look, I voted for the guy 3 times. He's not a messiah. He's not a god. He's made plenty of mistakes. He's doing them as we speak. And just because he likes this criminal, because they're crypto bros behind the scenes, doesn't mean that everyone's going to flock and bow and say Eric Adams is the savior. It's quite disturbing to see. But all these people, all their true colors are coming out. At least everyone watching this knows, all of us here, we're not grifting. We don't make money. We're not rich off this stuff. We're being honest. Unlike the people you're seeing online right now, which is, I'm watching it now. It's disturbing. It's disturbing.
It's interesting, right? So the main focus of this topic is, what will the NYPD look like? And depending on what the NYPD looks like, that affects morale for the NYPD, and it also affects public safety. So good morning, chat. Like, share, and subscribe, please. This is your Friday roundtable. Got a great crew with you from the Finance Unfiltered family. Shout out to John. It took the day off doing his shirtless videos. But what's interesting about that, especially for our active cops, and Rob, maybe you could allude to this also, right? Especially with all your experience being a retired chief. Early on in your career, I would say for myself, I'm not sure for you guys, you don't see the correlation between police and politics. And for me, being a good soldier, I served in the Marines and in the police, I was always from the school of thought, don't ask questions, just keep moving, because you ask too many questions, we slow things down. That's how people, God forbid, people die, people get hurt. But later on in your career, you start to realize how politics and policing is just intertwined and they weave in together. So this is so important right now, how it affects the NYPD. So I like to just go back a little bit in my own career, right? I started the police department, and Bloomberg was the mayor. And I think about stop, question, possibly frisk under a court case, People versus the Boer, and how that was a tool, which is nationwide. Some people think Ray Kelly invented it. That's not the case. It's a Supreme Court case. And how that was utilized, and how the morale was high because cops were engaged in intrusive police work, and it was supported. And the manpower was high, and public safety was at its peak. And then we transitioned into de Blasio, and we started to drift away from stop, question, and possibly frisk after the court case. Eric Adams was a big role in that. And then we get to Eric Adams. And Eric Adams, being the best cop ever, stop, question, possibly frisk under the case of People versus the Boer is very prevalent. And yet his argument was that black and brown are disproportionately stopped at a higher rate under the stop, question, possibly frisk. And we see that even more black and brown people are getting stopped. And it's a reflection of the crime that's going on in New York City. And it's a tool utilized under Mayor Eric Adams, not Captain Eric Adams. And for me, if we go to the article and just see that the NYPD under Mayor Eric Adams is still stopping black people, that's the fuel. Ron, to be fair, if you could pull that up, they're still stopping black people. Right? Here, the NYPD is still stopping black and brown under Mayor Eric Adams. To me, that's the fuel that gives Mamdani the power to say the NYPD is racist, to draw away from the NYPD, moving into this community-style policing, because that is the power, and that's the evidence for Mamdani to say that the NYPD is still racist. So under Mamdani, we could assure and we could assume that the NYPD will not engage in intrusive police work. This is scary stuff. Intrusive police work is the bedrock and foundation to keep safe in New York City. Marlon, what are your thoughts when you see this tweet?
Yeah, it's it's funny. I agree with you. Like when we came on, I didn't think about politics and the influence on it myself, and I think there was one difference between back then and like the more recent mayors, and that's that Bloomberg pretty much left the police department to operate on its own. I've always thought that was fascinating. I think maybe it's a byproduct of him having no knowledge about law enforcement, and Ray Kelly being so competent that he just left the department. But it's also funny that mayors say and do a lot of things before they become actual mayor, and they say a lot of anti-police things, there's a lot of wanting to civilianize the police department and increase oversight. You see it, and we saw it when before de Blasio became mayor, when he was campaigning and how he
protesting.
Yeah. And when he becomes mayor, he gets on a guy who's arguably the greatest law enforcement executive in the country at the time, and that was Bill Bratton. And it's funny because prior to getting on, de Blasio is very anti-police. He's talking about stop and question frisk and believes the police disproportionately stop black people and brown people, and yet he gets an executive that was a major proponent of using broken windows policy and stopping minor violations and using minor violations to go after bigger crimes. So we also see that with Eric Adams. Before he becomes mayor, he again talks down about the police and about the NYPD, and yet when he becomes mayor, he himself, as you just showed on that article, he himself increases stop, question, and frisk. So I think mayors face a certain reality once they get inside the door, and a lot of times it's like a wake up call, And even though they say one thing about police, they never do that when they become mayor. A lot of times they either look for the best police executive they can find, or they themselves change policy that inevitably ends up increasing, say, enforcement and say stop, question, and frisk. So I think we'll see that here in the case of Zohran, and as we'll get to further in the discussion, we'll see how much of his policy is exactly what Eric Adams is doing now.
Eric, I think you're absolutely right. Like when you're a young cop, you don't see any politics, right? So, but I came on in '87. I think maybe some of you were still in diapers at that time when I came on. But
Or not even
But,
thought of yet?
or maybe.
I was 5. I was 5 years old.
There you go. You're all right. Kindergarten. I could give you kindergarten. But we were told don't make street narcotics arrest. If you see somebody dealing drugs on the street, don't do anything. Right. So that was the political policy. I didn't understand it as a young cop. I'm like, hey, I knew that this guy giving drugs to this guy for money was a crime, but they didn't want me to enforce it. So I didn't even know why. But as a young cop, you're like, all right, the sergeant tells you, the lieutenant tells you, and that's pretty much as far as it went back then. Because you didn't even see the CO or XO. You know, you saw a guy in a suit run into his office, and you'd be like, hey, who was that? And, oh, that's the CO. And it's like, oh, really? Okay. You know, not like it is today where they're out every day looking at it. You know, they didn't even read 61s back there. I think they just stayed in the office and probably drank all day, but that's a whole nother story. But so you don't see that politics. And then it changes, right? Giuliani comes in, they take the handcuffs off and things change, more politics. And then as you get promoted, you see that, holy crap, there is so much politics in this, and everything is politicized. Even good police work, right? Stop, question, or frisk all of a sudden became politics, and it became so bad that they ruined it for everybody, right? They overemphasized it. They made it a Comstat issue. It just completely decimated it. And now you see, like you said, new mayors come in, and they don't see the whole picture, right? They easily can evaluate things based on, a blanket over everything. And then when they get there and they say, oh, I need this, because if I'm not stopping black and brown people that are committing crimes in black and brown communities, it's fruitless. I could stop 1,000 white guys. It does me absolutely no good. I'm not touching at all on the crime that's happening in that particular community. So you have to target what you need to do, the perpetrators. You can't just arbitrarily say I'm going to stop anything or anybody. So yeah, so I totally agree. Politics is a huge part of it, and you don't see it until you move up, or and then you realize how bad it is, and especially for promotions and everything else, how people kiss mayors' asses and kiss bosses' asses to get promoted. So that's all the politics that's in there. And I don't know, will Zohran, will he change it? I don't know. A lot of the stuff that he's saying has already been tried and failed. And it's easy to put stuff on paper. It's harder to put stuff into the hands of the police officers and let them do the job that they need to do. So it's gonna be a rough road, I think.
I think if Mamdani is to get elected, I just think it's another Bloomberg, not Bloomberg, it's another de Blasio, reign. When Bill de Blasio came in, he was an activist, right? Just like this guy, same thing. And he wanted to, destroy the police department. And what happened? He was using the police department to go campaign to be president. Owes $500,000 bill, right? He owes and what happened? That poor inspector, he lost his job because of that. They used him as the scapegoat. So
and what happened to de Blasio? He got a $300,000 fine or something. And this Howie Redmond gets a conviction, right?
And Howie Redmond's got a conviction, and this guy has to pay not only the money back, but he was using the NYPD as his personal security in other parts of the country. I mean, the whole thing, that just shows you, though. See, here's a guy, he's just like Mamdani, and that's what you're going to see if he runs the police department. The only difference here is people need to actually look at this. Mamdani is not a guy, I know this narrative that's out there, he's not some cave-dwelling jihadist terrorist, they keep saying. He grew up as a child from almost privilege. The mom is a filmmaker. The dad was a professor for Columbia. And another thing people don't realize is they used to live off campus, meaning Columbia paid their bills. They never even paid for rent or mortgages. I mean, they have a lot of money. He is if you're going to call him a socialist, he's a capitalist socialist. You don't even see that because he comes from privilege. So this is something even Marlon could tell you about in school, everyone. This guy is not what people are making him out to be. All this fear mongering is what's causing all of this. And the fear mongering, a great tactic for Eric Adams, an even better one for Donald Trump, who used that for the last 12 years. That's what you're seeing. It's fever pitched. No, in the NYPD, you won't lose your job. It's just you're going to probably, the morale will be in the toilet unless you have Curtis Sleever in charge who loves you guys. The morale will be in the toilet, even with Mamdani there. But there'll be a select few, some that are, just like every administration has the same thing. This administration had the Crumbs crew and the Con Sofrito crew. This one coming in, if it's Mamdani, you'll have another, bunch of guys that'll get, we'll say selectively picked to be special on the job. But if we're going to say, oh, I'm going to lose my job, it's over. No, it's not over if he's the mayor. Life goes on. I remember him always saying this to me. It really doesn't matter who's in charge because technically the people that run the organization, the NYPD, the FBI, they're always in charge. That's how they always talk about it. So it's just morale will be, if not the same, maybe worse. It depends what this guy says. Remember, what you say to get elected is not what happens when you govern. We see that with Mr. Trump a lot, right? You definitely saw that with Eric Adams, right? He didn't defund the police totally, but he's misusing funds and misusing the police and all kinds of stuff, right? So he'll do the same thing. That's all that's going to happen. It's not the end of the world, but New York City could do better, and I think it would do better with Curtis Sleever as the mayor. And I really do think that Eric Adams should get out of the race because he has no shot. I'll keep reiterating that, and we could go over those points later on, but he cannot win.
Well, let's just say this, right? There is no room in New York City for corruption. So Eric Adams has to step down. Has to step down for the good of the people of New York City, for the good function of New York City. There's no room for corruption. I hear a lot of people say, well, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, right? So my argument to that is, and I said this on a prior podcast, but my Starlink was glitching out the entire time. I don't know if that part got out. But the bottom line is that Eric Adams is a devil we really don't know. And the reason why I say that is because he's the first mayor of New York City to be indicted, and yet his court case did not play out. So how is this the devil we know? Because I would like to know what went on with that case. Now, we saw the indictment. The allegations are pretty damning. To me, the preponderance of evidence was met. What does that mean? That it's more likely he committed those actions he's accused of, those allegations. And those allegations are not administrative infractions like myself got substantiated with CCRB. We're talking about crimes. These allegations are crimes. We never saw Eric Adams go to a courtroom, stand up and say, not guilty, I didn't do this, because of the Department of Justice under Donald Trump, that Eric Adams has been supported. So that's the problem in this race. Now, Mamdani, we don't know him either. But I can tell you this. What do we know? Now, you compare Mamdani to de Blasio. But to me, and I think Marlon, you probably agree, to me, Mamdani and Eric Adams, they're the same. When I spent time in Asia, I spent close to a year there, and I made a lot of friends out there. There was one guy I talked to. I mention this all the time because it always sticks in my head. And he said, you know what the difference is between Asia and America is? And I would say, what? He says, Asia's so corrupt that it's honest. I can buy my way out of anything. You can pay for anything. It's so corrupt that it's honest because everybody knows it is. He says the difference with America is it's so corrupt, but you pretend to be honest. So to me, that's the difference. Eric Adams shows you what he wants to show you, this different face, right? He defunded the police also. He defunded the NYPD. Listen, I'm going to use Marlon's words, perception management. Perception management. Under Eric Adams, he's controlling the media. He's controlling your perspective by telling you crime is down. I'm talking about the New York City resident, telling you crime is down, yet you see with your own eyes. Look what's going on in these subways. Look what's going on in these streets under Eric Adams. Mamdani, to me, the difference is he's telling you, yeah, I'm going to defund the police. Eric Adams is telling you, but he wants you to see something different on the surface. Mamdani's telling you, I'm going to defund the police. I'm going to utilize the NYPD in a different manner. I'm having the community policing step in, right? He's telling you that. So, Ron, can you pull up that video? We got a great video where Mamdani is talking about de-escalation. right? He's talking about he's not going to utilize cops to de-escalate it. He wants to utilize community. So to me, that's further indication that there's going to be defunding the police. So what will the NYPD look like? It's going to look like what Rob said. Run out the door. Run out the door. The difference is some people don't want to run out the door. Here we go. Stop right there. But before we play this, the difference is with Eric Adams, some people didn't run out the door because it's very fruitful if you're part of that tier one. If you're Jeffrey Madry, if you're John Shelby, Kaz Daughtry, it's good to be close to Eric Adams. But if you're going to be a cop under Mamdani, maybe it's time to run. This is what's going to happen to public safety. Let's play the video.
Policing in certain areas which are labeled as being high crimes, to have alternative bodies, do the policing in a more compassionate, more merciful, more social, assisting and helping more than arresting and putting in jail.
I absolutely think that what we need to do is give support and funding to institutions that are trained to deal with these kinds of issues. Mm-hmm. As you said, if you're having an argument with someone and there's a risk of it escalating, who is better positioned to de-escalate it? Someone who is well known in the community, or someone who has been trained specifically in de-escalation, or a stranger who has a gun? And
Stop right there. Just listen to that. If you're in the NYPD, you're not a friend to the community. Under future mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, the NYPD cop, is a stranger with a gun. He's trying to paint the cops out to be some type of demon. He's villainizing the cops right now. The difference with Eric Adams, he doesn't publicly say that. Eric Adams is a political genius, complete moron, but he's a genius in a sense. He'll say it in a different way, but he's doing something completely different. How do we know that? The mandate. He got rid of all these cops. He didn't bring them back. Mayor Eric Adams just completely destroyed this administration. We have numerous cops out there have been completely unprofessional under this administration, utilizing social media in a different tactic, which gives the fuel for someone like Mamdani to say the things that he's saying right now, because Eric Adams gave him the ammunition. Eric Adams gave him the ammunition to say the NYPD is racist. Eric Adams gave him the ammunition to say such. Let's continue with the video.
So many situations where encounters with police, the police arrive and all of a sudden the tension rises even astronomically to what it was prior. Right. And I think that we need to say and ask ourselves, look at how policing is done in the suburbs, in wealthier, whiter America. When people make mistakes, the answer is not to throw them in jail. No. The answer is not to, put them in a cage and throw away the key. The answer is to try and find a non-carceral solution.
Absolutely.
Community service, something where they learn from their mistakes. There's a sense of accountability and growth. All these kinds of things, which for many people in this country, especially Black people, are not offered the same opportunity.
Okay.
Stop right there, Marlon. What are your thoughts, especially when he says Black people? Wow. I mean, look what happened to you with the police department. What are your thoughts when you see that video?
Yeah, so Ron, when you can, play that video of Brandon Johnson. I included
to defund the police.
Yeah, that's
explain that.
Yeah, what we're seeing is obviously an outbreak of incredible frustration and anguish that communities that have been isolated through poverty over generations. And what we have is sort of a typical, very standard, quite frankly, a very tired response to the regularly scheduled pandemic, which is structural racism. And that response has been to increase police presence that has not led to anything of substance to secure communities and to make communities whole.
Yeah. So that video of Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, is right after the riots of the Summer of Love in 2020. And you notice his comments aren't that far off from what Mamdani is saying, and the reason why I brought up Chicago specifically is because as we're going to go into the some of Mamdani's policy documents right now, you'll see he uses Chicago as an example of a policy success, one of the policies that he plans on using. So I thought it appropriate that here you have Brandon Johnson making a similar comments about police, and Chicago right now has a violent crime rate of 11%, and that's a huge increase from years prior. And it's right now they're going through a 20-year high in aggravated assaults. Okay, so Chicago isn't doing well. And here you have Mamdani saying the similar comments about policing. So I think again, yeah, this. So you see on the image on the right in yellow is Mamdani's policy documents for his Department of Community Safety. Okay, and the box you see in black on the bottom is some of the crime rates for the cities that he touts as successes for some of his policy initiatives, like the violence interrupter. Okay,
Baltimore. Baltimore.
Yeah. Well, that's the question. They said he has Baltimore on there, and he also has Charlotte on there, but he has Charlotte, Maryland, and there's no Charlotte, Maryland. Okay, there's Charlotte, North Carolina, and those places. Charlotte's getting a little better because they're getting a lot of investment right now, but there's still a lot of dangerous patches, and especially in Baltimore. Baltimore is a city that seems to have been lost to time right now. Yeah. So
yeah, Marlon, not to cut you off, but I would say that Baltimore would be the last comparison for a success of a city. Yeah. I mean, listen, Thomas Edison said it took 1,000 failures, right? And those failures were actually 1,000 steps to success. So maybe for Mamdani, there's 1,000 different cities that are failures for him to make it to success. I don't see how that's a good comparison. I mean, Baltimore is the premise for the show The Wire. And you can see just the real estate decimation, the decimation of the police, the politics in Baltimore is so affected. This is the last, and in fact, this is the last comparison we should make it to.
Baltimore, Eric, isn't Baltimore where the mayor, I think she got in trouble over it? I mean, it's a really corrupt town in the way it's run. I mean, I think they should be pulling executive. They should have Rob try to become the police commissioner, and maybe he can. I don't know if he can fix that town. I don't know, Rob. I don't know. It's really bad.
Easy, Sal.
I'll tell you what. If Rob takes over, I'll become a cop again. Marlon, do you have Detroit on there? I'm just curious. If he has Detroit on there, we might as well just quit this whole thing.
Actually, that'd be a good thing because Detroit's actually waking up lately. But they're also seems to have hit rock. They needed to hit rock bottom before they actually woke up over there. But what's worse is he has Culiacan, Mexico on there. That's hilarious. Okay, because that's the heart of the Sinaloa cartel right now. That's why I put that image of hundreds dead in Mexico City right now. They're talking about Culiacan, Mexico. So I don't know if I don't know if Zohan's team actually even read this document or who produced it, but clearly they're detached from reality here. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because what he's saying now is detached from reality, and he's going to face a new reality if he gets into that mayor's office, like de Blasio, and he's not going to he's going to have to straighten up. Okay, I think we tend to gloss over it, but again, as I said last go around, de Blasio, after all his comments about policing, he goes out and he finds the best police executive out there. Okay, and I think that's exactly what Zohan's gonna do, even after all of that. So when I hear him talking about that, I think to myself, okay, that's fine now, but let's see once you get inside the office how that's going to how much you're going to change.
I mean, I thought you guys liked me, and now you sent me to Baltimore. I mean, geez.
We'll come visit you. We'll come visit you.
Come visit me. You know what?
I love Camden Yards, by the way. That's one of my favorite ball fields. Awesome.
Listen, deputy commissioner, all right?
Wait. You're already running a corrupt administration. Here we go.
I love when he talks about that police escalate. I don't remember if you look at watch cop videos in white suburban neighborhoods. I don't see cops like giving people a free ride, right? It's the same type of police procedures. If you're wrong, you're wrong. You go to jail. If you're emotionally disturbed, they take you into custody and they give you the mental health. But last time I looked, every time that I showed up on the job, there were a few people thanking me. Thank God you showed up, because it quelled everything. So he talks about police respond and escalate. I mean, that's bizarre. That's not what we do. We go there and we de-escalate. That's what we're trained to do. And if somebody sees cops there and gets pissed off that they're there, yeah, there may be one or two of those. But for the most part, we calm everything down and bring it down to a level where we can control it. So I think he's off base with that, and I totally agree with Sal, Marlon, and you, Eric, that he's going to turn around completely when he gets in that position and say, you know what, I can't handle it the way I thought I could. They were better at it than I thought.
Yeah. I agree with you, Rob. That's like I don't know, this guy, his policies, that to follow the model of Baltimore that's like completely downgrading. I don't even think that it's even feasible, because I'm sure that, as you just said, Rob, it's one thing to say something to get in, it's another to govern. I can't imagine him. He's going to see this and go, wait a minute, I can't do this. Now, what I saw, though, the video you played, those policy documents, that's what people need to focus on and start putting that out there. And you're going to get low information people that go, you know what? Let me look into this. That's what you want. You don't want the rhetoric of he's a jihadi terrorist, because prove that, because he's not. You're pushing people to him because they don't like the ad hominem attacks. Remember when they called Trump a criminal, a felon? How'd that work out? And when Trump was calling Kamala Harris, I don't know if she's Indian or African American, or that, people don't want to hear that. They want to hear, what is your policy? So that policy right there, which sounds absolutely insane, if you're going to follow the model of Baltimore and all these failed cities, when New York City, as bad as it is, at least there's a structure, especially with the police department, it's going to go off the rails. I can't imagine that, because I think Bill de Blasio ran a similar platform. And then again, when he got there, what was he doing? The NYPD was his private security, and he got one guy fired and terminated, and he had to pay $500,000 in fines. So again, there's a lot of fear mongering here, and it shouldn't be. Stick to the policies. You saw that policy, hammer them on that, and present your own policy that trumps that or beats that, and the people will vote on this. But if you're going to go back to name calling and finger pointing, that might work in the WWE. It's not going to work when it comes to getting someone elected. Sorry, just won't.
You know what's interesting, Marlon? I'm so glad that you brought up that chart, because I think it's really reflective of a comment that we got earlier, right? So there was a comment we got earlier. I apologize. I don't remember who it was from. If you made it, you can put it back up on the screen. Someone said Gen Zs are voting right now, right? So I think the reason why I said that kind of reflects on the stuff that Marlon pulled up, because for most of Gen Zs, I think they're born 97. So you got to figure during the Bloomberg era, they were young, they were little kids they're not watching politics, they're not affected by it. You're a small kid, you stay into your neighborhood. Here we go. TFR 60, Gen Zs are now voting. So for the Gen Zs, they don't really understand of how New York City was thriving in comparison to Marlon, the cities that you're putting up. They were failures back then. Baltimore was a failure back then, right? Baltimore, Detroit, St. Louis. You look at these cities that New York City was failing with crime also, and New York City separated from that and started to do well under Giuliani and into Bloomberg, and utilizing the court case of People versus DeBoer as a great crime tactic. Unfortunately, anytime you put a number on something, it gets distorted. And the reason why I say that is The Gen Zs don't realize what New York City was like and how it transformed into into a place to be proud of. And at that time, that's when I say the NYPD was the GOAT of policing. The NYPD was revered throughout the entire country. And so the Gen Zs never got a chance to see that. So they're seeing what the police department looks like now, what the city is like now. They're growing up in a complete different era. And the Gen Zs are voting. They see Mamdani. Oh, here's someone that's going to give stuff as free. The NYPD is a complete failure. He's going to move away from that. They don't remember the NYPD being the go-to police and being that pride organization known throughout the entire world. Unfortunately, I'm traveling right now, and people are like, what's going on in that city? What's going on there? What's going on with the NYPD? And I got to kind of put my head down like, I don't know. Watch New York's Finest with Unfiltered Podcast. Watch Executive Perspective. Watch Sal Greco. Watch the Finest Unfiltered. We're trying to get the word out there. So with that being said, we've seen the tides turn, right? And now we see Mamdani say something like, the man with the gun, there's a stranger. The NYPD is not your friend. And to me, what is that? That light in my head say, wow, cops are being assaulted right now at an alarming rate we've never seen before. Cops are being attacked because there's no support, the way they've been treated. And now with Mamdani saying rhetoric is those powerful words, especially if he becomes mayor, I think that the cops are going to be completely under siege. And it's going to be even scarier because the cops are already being attacked and assaulted. And with rhetoric like that, saying that man with a gun is a stranger, that's the one that's going to escalate a situation. That's going to make it even more dangerous for a cop. Well, what are your thoughts? I think that verbiage he just said is extremely damaging and scary.
Well, here's the thing, right? Let's go back to the policy documents again for a second. The number 3, Ron. Not only is Baltimore mentioned in there, but Oakland is also mentioned later on.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
In terms of restorative justice, And again, Oakland is another city that's a failure. Okay. But here's the other thing. So all the initiatives that Zohran mentions in here that he's going to increase funding for are all initiatives that are already in place right now. There's nothing new that he's bringing to the table. He mentions the crisis management system, which that was started under de Blasio in 2014. PATH is May 2021. And again, restorative justice is another one of those initiatives that, it began in around 2015. And as you can see on the left side, the city already spends a ton of money for those. Zohan's plan is to increase the funding for it. So again, it's not working now, but it'll work when we dump a lot more money into it. Sure. Okay. And sure, we won't turn out like Baltimore or Oakland, Apparently we're gonna do something that's completely it's gonna work completely different over here and work here, even though it hasn't been working in those other cities. Okay. So yeah, I think Zohran is a little detached from reality, and that reality is approaching, and it's gonna smack him in the face when he walks into the office, and just like it did de Blasio, and so yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Marlon, what do you think about that rhetoric, though? If he becomes the mayor and his rhetoric is that the man with the gun is the one that's going to escalate it and he's a stranger, do you think that's going to impact what I'm saying, that potentially the NYPD cops could be in a more tactical disadvantage? By the way, John's watching with his bald head, shirtless. John, good morning, brother. He says, where's the handsome bald guy? I don't know. He's probably shirtless right now. But what do you think about that? Do you think that?
No, I'm sorry, Eric. Go on.
No. What do you think about? Because we're talking about what's the NYPD look like? What is it? I mean, cops are already being assaulted at an alarming rate and attacked, especially with legal military age males and the rhetoric, and there's no support. And under this corrupt administration, with that rhetoric, where does this take the NYPD cop? Will they still be assaulted at an alarming rate? What do you think holds for the NYPD cop?
Well, I don't think. Well, you see, the cops getting assaulted. I think that's a byproduct of the poor academy training and the poor tactics training right now, and the quality of recruits they get. But what I think is going to happen, right, is I think you're going to see civilians being hurt more. And the reason why I'm saying civilians is because you look at his policy documents. He wants more civilian. He wants initiatives that put civilians at risk. Okay, a lot of these initiatives involve civilians, like maybe social workers or psychiatrists responding to incidents, and they're gonna get hurt. A lot of them are gonna get hurt, right? And it's gonna force him again. That reality is gonna smack him in the face, and then we're gonna go back to having a more enforcement. We're gonna go back to meat and potatoes policing, and you know, I think at that point we're gonna have a similar change. We're gonna have a similar law enforcement executive like De Blasio had. He's gonna have to find himself a Bratton, okay? Because it just doesn't work. Is the point that I'm trying to say.
I before you go, Rob, I just want to say I think that's a great point. And you actually brought out what I wanted to mention in the next go round is the fact that not only will cops be under siege, that he's putting these civilians at a tactical disadvantage, and he's putting them vulnerable and risk. Rob, what are your thoughts, especially being from special operations, escalation, de-escalation on this whole thing for cops? And what Marlon's saying, I agree.
I totally agree with Marlon, and we've seen it already in pilot programs and stuff. So, but we'll get into that. But this is what I say. I say, look at the fire department, right? The fire department stays in their station houses, and they respond to fires. So this is how I see the police department. Police department's going to have no more roving sectors. We're going to stay in our station house. We're going to let these civilian outreach programs go out, evaluate the situation, possibly get hurt or stabbed or shot, all right, in an EDP or whatever, and then they're going to have the cops respond. So it's not going to be proactive. It's not going to be intrusive policing like you always say. It's going to be reactive, completely reactive, and it's only going to be reactive to what the civilian already on the scene has done, and if they've escalated it to a point where it's out of control. And what's going to happen? The police are going to have to come in and clean up the mess. And until there's a complete failure of that system, then and only then will he then decide, you know what, I do need a Bratton, I do need a Kelly, I do need somebody that can motivate these cops and get them back out there. And it's going to be a big cultural change for cops because they're scared at that point. Do I have a guy in the mayor's office that's going to back me if the crap hits the fan? Or is he going to say, see, I told you, you were a bad cop and you're wrong? So it's a really catastrophic position. And I think it completely decimates the police officers and their capabilities, and it makes them responsive. They might as well just make them all PAAs, right? We might as well just police administrative aides and take complaint reports. So, and then I also think that he's not going to give a rat's ass until it's time for re-election. And maybe people start saying, hey, why is the crime up? Why is this up? And then maybe he'll look at that. But right now he wants to keep the police down here, and he wants to elevate these civilian models that are, and truthfully, if I was going to be an EMT, or if I was going to be a Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, and I had to go to these calls, I'd be a little nervous because there's nobody behind me to help me if something happens. So it's a road less traveled, and it's going to be rough for the police officers, I think. And he's not a friend of the police.
I would say that, but you actually mentioned something now, because now we get into the civilians and all that. But you just mentioned Bratton's name, Bill Bratton. Now, if you remember when De Blasio brought in Bill Bratton, I believe you would say, right, you thought you were getting the Bill Bratton from the Jack Maple days.
Right.
So now, you're saying if he brings a police commissioner from the past to like try to cover up the fact that he's going to run the city into the ground with his policy. So who do you see, Rob, him bringing And how do you see this? I see it as the exact same scenario. Who could he bring in? Because it's a face from the past, and then, oh, but he can't be that guy from the past. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. He needs to bring somebody in. First of all, you see, Zohan's got the young vote, right? So he's got to bring in somebody young and innovative. I totally agree. It can't be a Bratton. It can't be any of these old guys. It wouldn't be me, right? Because I'm old and I'm old school. No, it's got to be new and innovative ways that could cater to his beliefs, but also be productive. It's a hard road, but I totally agree. You can't put a face of some old guy up there and say now he's going to change things, because you the city will go completely against. In my opinion, old guys 60 and over, you're out. This is the new norm, right? So you enjoy your retirement and come on as a guest on our podcast, but don't think you can run the police department anymore, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean it's time to retire? There's a time to retire and time to hang it up? Someone should tell it to John Shell.
but you can't even, if you were to do this, right, and you put one of these people in, I guess the appearance would be he wants to show strength by having like a strong guy who's got a history like in a police department, but clearly they're decapitated, meaning they're going to be running things his way. So it's just a face to try to make look at all the cops. Oh, look, we brought back this person that is not even close to being who they used to be. Like that's kind of what happened on the de Blasio, because we all thought we're getting Mr. Broken Windows, and then little by little you were saying, "Oh my God, like it's not who we thought it was." Take me back, please. Get me somebody else. And then you get Phil Banks and all these other guys involved. But that's the thinking. And then when you mentioned listen, this civilian idea I've heard for a long time, and it's always been a disaster in other cities. So how the hell would you send like this crime prevention policy? I don't know. I don't even know what that means. How you're going to be violence prevent? Because that would mean you have to be proactive, and clearly Mamdani's policies already, what I'm reading, are not proactive. He's not going to be proactive. It's against everything he's saying. So how do you use a civilian? Civilians go to houses for like a mentally disturbed person, and there's been, you could see in other cities around this country, they've gotten seriously hurt or killed. I've seen it. So how are you sending a civilian to go do it? The reason police come is because if things go haywire, they can make arrests. They have body armor. They have tasers. They have things to kind of quell if things go, sideways. So how do you bring a civilian into this? Because that would be, I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to bring a civilian agency to kind of take the role of what the cops should be doing. And I don't see how that's going to work. That's a model for failure, to be honest. I don't know if he's going to implement that. That won't work. I'm sorry. That's a complete fail.
Yeah, if I may,
Absolutely.
The lone silencer in the chat, he says, I guarantee if he wins and picks a PC, it will be a person of color, as the left hates white people. Well, to add to that, I've heard a rumor that Tanya Kinsella wants to, is hoping to like outlast Adams and become the PC. So, but I agree with you that he's definitely going to do that. Now, the question is, though, will he bring on an old school guy? And here's what I think is going to happen. I think it may not necessarily be the PC that's the tough talking old school cop, but I still think you're going to get somebody like a Chell who's going to be tough talking, and they'll talk tough and tell the young guys that they'll protect them, and you'll have a situation like with the CRT where these young guys are going to go out there and do what they have to do, but what's going to happen afterwards with the DA's office? I think that's exactly what you're going to see. And also to go back to look at Zohan's model of community safety, right? If you could go to picture 0, Ron. So you're seeing that that Zohan basically wants to consolidate a lot of the mental health response initiatives of the city into this Department of Community Safety. And I thought it was interesting that one of those is the if you could go to picture number 1, Ron. He talks about increasing the budget, right? What's interesting about this is he wants he wants the budget for this to be around $300 million, but the city already spends $2.3 billion on the Department of Mental Health, right? So I want to know, first of all, is this going to be an additional cost, or is he planning to cut the budget for the Department of Mental Health? And the other question I have is that the NYPD right now has something called the co-response teams, right? Co-response unit. Now, I've used that unit a couple times when I was in Leeds. And the thing about that unit is, I don't know if they've changed the way they operate, but a lot of times when you call them, they'll ask you, are you coming out with us? And if you can't come out with them, they're not going out there. So if Zohan plans on consolidating a lot of the mental health responses of the city, how is that going to work if these units aren't going to go out there on their own, right? That means we're going to need a cop for each one of them, because as it stands right now, a lot of these units are not going to go out there on their own. They need a cop because they're afraid of getting hurt, and rightfully so, because as Sal's mentioned, civilians have gotten hurt throughout the country, responding to mental people in mental health crisis. Okay, so that's something I just wanted to point out.
Marlon, I think you're spot on. I think that if we look back early on in my career, if you guys remember Kendra's law and also mental health hygiene is something that weighed heavily, right? Especially Kendra's law, right? There was a response of clinicians, no different than they're saying right now, with response of clinicians, but also with the response of the police department. And then under the Department of Mental Hygiene, if you remember, I did it personally. I remember as a cop, I had to take someone in on a court order and bring them in. And it became very volatile. And sometimes people don't realize. And I remember I had actually, if you guys remember years ago, there was a woman in Staten Island and she went sleeping around with firemen all over in different firehouses. And she was actually, we had to bring her in on a mental hygiene case. And we were told to uncuff her. And of course, it didn't turn out well. We had to get her back in cuffs and she was ranting and raving. But the point to that is you need a police response. And what Mamdani wants to do, and Marlon, if it's in that also, he wants to create a team called Be Heard. So if anybody's heard that before, that team is going to be comprised of EMTs, 911 personnel, and mental hygiene. But when it comes to 911 personnel, he's not talking about cops. And that's exactly the problem. He wants, we've seen it even under Eric Adams. We've heard that there was going to be different initiatives to remove homeless off the streets. And the reason why I say homeless is because to me, that's a correlation to mental health. For the most part, the majority of homeless are either substance abuse or mental illness or both. It's very rare that someone is just outright homeless. There are some outliers out there, but for the most part, it's usually mental health or substance abuse. So when it comes to homeless, look at the outreach that we got from the NYPD under Eric Adams. It was, let's arrest ourselves at a situation. So to me, I think this is attractive to voters because here's someone that actually wants to help them and not have a police response, right? Because people, I think sometimes, especially Gen Z voters, I'm not speaking for them, but based on my observations, they're tired of seeing police departments arrest themselves out of situations. So they want to see solutions. So here's Mamdani offered a solution away from the police department. So I think Marlon is spot on. And what happens? That actually escalates situations and requires more of a response from the NYPD. The NYPD needs to be there. You're absolutely right, Marlon, because if we respond to these things without the NYPD, it escalates the situation, goes back to what we're saying, potential assaults. We're putting these civilians in vulnerable situations. It can become volatile. And the NYPD, let's be honest, there's no one better in this country than the NYPD when it comes to controlling and dealing with people, especially emotionally disturbed, just because of the voluminous in a dense population, metropolis of New York City, of constantly dealing with people, good people, bad people, and everyone at some point in their life, has a bad day. It could be emotionally disturbed. So NYPD cops to deal with that constant basis, but we're being sold this idea that the NYPD escalates situations, that they're not part of crisis management. And to me, this is going to have an adverse effect and make it far worse. Rob, I mean, you could speak to this. I mean, especially being special operations and the training and response of issue and the cops when it comes to crisis management and emotionally disturbed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just want to touch real quick about, he talks about this plan as $1.1 million, right? 605 of it he's going to steal from other things that are already in place, and he's going to take and he's going to come up with 455 million. I don't know where he's coming up with that. If he's cutting, every taxes, he's cutting everything out, rent, everything else. Right. So just to Marlon's point, the co-response team, they fell under Special Operations Division when they originally started. And by no means were they supposed to ask you to go with them. They were the two MOSs, members of the service, were supposed to go out with a clinician. And yeah, we took calls from a lot of other from Intel, things just to check on people, right? Just to see what there was. Some of them may have been like, hey, we suspect this guy might be an EDP and he's making terrorist complaints and things like that. And they would go out. Then they were moved under collaborative policing. So we lost them. But I don't know where in the mix they got lost there, where they should have been asking you to go with them. That was never the case. They were supposed to go there, and they were all trained together. And the clinicians, from what I understood, were pretty good, the ones that I met. So that I don't know what happened with that one. And yeah, EDPs. So emotionally disturbed people. I know when I left, there was over 100,000 a year, right? And that doesn't mean everyone was done by ESU. A lot of them were done by patrol cops who easily went in, de-escalated it, and took the person into custody. Let's remember that when somebody calls 911 about an emotionally disturbed person, they're asking for the police to respond. Why? Because that incident has gotten so bad that they can't handle it, and they probably feel that just the EMTs aren't going to be able to handle it either. So they're calling for us. They want us to respond. And I can tell you, speaking on behalf of the EMTs, they want us there too, because you never know when something that could just be a regular emotional disturbance all of a sudden turns volatile, and easily accessibility to weapons in the kitchen, in the house. You're going into a house where you don't know where those weapons are. So when you start saying that I'm just going to send in civilians, I'm just going to send in EMTs, I think you're putting those people in serious risk. That there's a possibility at any time something could turn, volatile, and the response of the police is how long? Now we're 2 or 3 minutes out, even maybe 5 minutes out, and that in itself could lead to homicides or assaults on EMTs and the clinicians. And if I remember correctly, when they tried this before in the city, they couldn't even get clinicians to hire. None of them wanted to do it on their own. They didn't want to go there and be vulnerable to these people. And then I think in his plan, some of them are like, you're going to have people in the community that are going to respond. Is he paying for these people in the community? Are the volunteers? I mean, and really, is that going to help anybody if they're really in emotional crisis? That somebody I know comes in? No, maybe that's more vulnerability, or maybe there's more anger with that person. Like, hey, I just talked to you on the street, and now you're coming in my house and telling me I got to calm down. I got to calm down. So I mean, it to me, it has a recipe for disaster. And I think that the current system, where police officers respond, they evaluate the situation, they try to de-escalate. If they can't, then they call emergency service unit. What I feel the big thing is, and they tried this, and I don't know what ever happened to it. They were going to put centers in each of the diversion centers in each of the boroughs. And what it was a regular, if you had a EDP, you could take, and they didn't require medical, right? So our problem is when we take somebody, an EDP, we have to go to the hospital, get them medically cleared, and then take them to the psych ward, which holds up the police officers for a long time, right? Because you can't really release anybody until they're in the psych ward, until they take custody of them. So there was going to be diversion centers. So if somebody was emotionally disturbed, but they just wanted to get out of the situation, or they're down in the subways and you needed a place to take them, these were going to be diversion centers. Now that fell on the back burner too. I haven't heard much of that.
I remember that. Wasn't there something to do with funding? I specifically remember what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, that was Charlene. I think that was her billions of dollars that she used to fund her marijuana problems. So I think that, yeah. So, but I mean, there's, that in my opinion, that would have worked, because now you're alleviating. The police officer takes the person to diversion center, drops them off, back on patrol, and then you're back out. And then they would have gotten the mental health and stuff that they needed in that particular diversion center. But that fell by the wayside. I don't know where that was. Thrive NYC, right? That was her money making scam there. But EDPs, we're trained in that. We know that. That's our job, and we do it the best. From the police officer on the street that responds first, to the guys in emergency service unit that respond, and the hostage negotiation and technical system, we have it down pat. I mean, I think we're spot on with that.
Speaking of spot on, Rob, you got a great compliment right here. It comes from Mazel Tov in the chat. He says, Chief Lou Cash is Paul Newman from Fort Apache with 2 thumbs up. So that's a nice compliment. He's out there running. He's keeping himself in shape. So
I know Rob mentioned in the first sentence he mentioned. Did I hear you say Mamdani's got $1 billion that he's trying to do for this mental health program? Did you say? You said
his whole program, all of it, all of his Department of Community is community safety is allocated $1.1 million. That's what he's allocating. That's what $1.1 billion, and he's saying that $605 million he's going to take from existing services. I don't know where he's getting that from. Is that from the police department, the overtime budget? Where is that? And then he wants to, and then it's going to ask for another $455 million to bring this whole thing up. So where is he getting that?
Not only that, the last guy that was in the same mold, Bill de Blasio, you mentioned again his wife. How much money does she take for Thrive NYC that did absolutely nothing? It's the same sounding scenario right now you just laid out.
Yeah.
So all he's doing is reinventing he's going back to the well and trying to reinvent the wheel is what I'm hearing. It's the same scenario. $1 billion. Oh, we're going to take 500 million there. And it sounds like it's a grift operation. So I'm correct by saying he's a socialist, but a capitalist, because he's about taking money. See, he's already setting up his schemes. He's a lot smarter than people give it to him. All I'm going to say, people, again, they flock to him because he's young. He knows how to speak. He's campaigning. He's an activist. His policies, what you just said, it's absolutely asinine. New York City will go back to the same thing that we just had. Not even like 4 years ago. You're going to do the same. Thrive New York City, it's going to be Thrive Mamdani. And you're going to let this, I mean, I can only see one of the reasons people flocking to him is because the ad hominem attacks. If you lay off that stuff and go to this crate, like what you just said, Rob, people will come to their senses and go, you know what? Those weirdos with the pink hair, they'll vote for him, but not, a 50-year-old, voting blocks, African Americans, Hispanics, the people that will matter, the Asian community, they're going to be a blockade, especially with a 4 or 5 man field. So again, what you just said, Rob, is insane. It sounds exactly like Thrive NYC, but it's Thrive Mamdani. That's all it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to segue into, more ammunition, I believe, what is selling to the voters in New York City, right? So what they're seeing under Eric Adams is a failed administration, a corrupt administration, and a failed NYPD. And when I say failed NYPD, for my active retired members, I'm not talking about the boots on the ground. I'm talking about the upper echelon. And when I say a failed NYPD, I'm talking about the job. And when I say the job, I mean people. I always say, right? You've heard me say that before. The job is people. And the people at the upper echelon are the ones that have the keys to the NYPD, right? They have the keys to the car. The car is the boots on the ground, but the NYPD upper echelon has the keys. And what do we see under Eric Adams? Under Eric Adams, we see the CCRB get more teeth, and their complaint is now that under Eric Adams, from the NYCLU, we see that complaints of NYPD abuse are way up. This was February of 2024. And they even give a chart to show that the complaints over the years under de Blasio were going down. And then under Eric Adams, we see from 2021 to 2024, I know it's kind of small. If you zoom in, you can see the complaints start to skyrocket. So obviously, John and myself, I remember on social media and on the podcast, we defended the NYPD when it came to this. And we defended the NYPD boots on the ground, saying that there are more complaints being derived through the Civilian Complaint Review Board. One is because they're self-generated, self-initiated by the CCRB. Also, because crime is up. Even though Eric Adams is selling this perception versus this perception narrative that crime is down, crime is way up. So the cops are doing their job. So more police work, more intrusive police work equals more complaints. But to me, this is more ammunition for Mamdani campaign to say, hey, under Eric Adams, the complaints are on the rise. Where, that stranger, the man with the gun, is not de-escalating the situation. They're escalating the situation. So that's more ammunition for Mamdani to defund the police and utilize this community public safety apparatus, these Be Heard teams, and sell this idea to Gen Zs because, hey, according to these reports, the complaints are on the rise and crime is down, and yet we have a police force that's brutal. So these, to me, that's what's great about this podcast is we're, as Sal likes to say, we're giving you evidence, facts, information. We're showing you facts that can be correlated and ammunition from Mamdani. Because there are a lot of people saying, how did this guy get to this point? How are New York City residents voting for a socialist? And I always say it's timing. The timing's impeccable. If this was the Giuliani era, it would never happen. But the timing is impeccable. We have Cuomo, who created legislation that destroyed the entire state with bail reform, that led to the diaphragm law. Right? It was enacted by the New York City Council, but it was proposed by Cuomo. We have Eric Adams, who destroyed the city. So at this point, and Slee was not getting any traction. And unfortunately, Jim Walton's got great policies, but not getting the support that he needs. And so Eric Adams is getting all the support for Blue MAGA, but for the young Gen Z voters are saying, well, look at the condition the police department is in. Look at the condition the city is in. It's so expensive to live there with all this crime. And Mamdani is giving you away the store. So he's looking pretty good. And he's willing to not utilize the police department. There's other ways to move without the police department because most of the Gen Z voters didn't get to see what the city was like when the city was just being completely overrun. Look at Times Square before Giuliani stepped in and look at it, towards the end of the Bloomberg era. And you look at it now and it's like, do the Gen Zs know that? Do they remember that? Probably not. I mean, Marlon, what are your thoughts on complaints going up and how that is centralized for Mamdani?
Yeah. So, Ron, if we could go to the NYCLU chart again. When I see this chart, you know what I think? Isn't it curious that the stops started going up around 2022? Now, why was that happening around that time frame? Well, if you could go to that picture I just sent you, Ron. Well, it's because look what started around that same time frame, the community response teams. Now, we've talked a lot about the khaki pants guys, okay? The idea itself is not a bad idea. the problem is that as we've said many times before, the department needs to put pressure on other parts of the justice system, to the city's justice system, to work with the police department. So these young guys who go out there, first of all, the issue is that a lot of these young guys are young and inexperienced. Okay. And now you're telling them to get out there and be active, and the DA's office isn't working with them afterwards. Okay. So that's the problem. The idea itself is not a bad idea. If we had a CRT staffed with experienced cops and they were given all these resources, I think it's a great idea. But you can't do a piecemeal approach, which is what the Adams administration did. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because, again, you see the rhetoric of Eric Adams before he became mayor, right? He talked about stop, question, and frisk, and how much he didn't like it. And again, you see, if you look at the complaints on that NYCLU chart, you see them going down, and then just at mid 2022, they started going up. You see that the lowest point is the reality check. And that's the reality check that Mamdani is going to face once he gets in there. Okay. The reality check is going to be when the communities start complaining about quality of life and how things are starting to spiral out of control. And if you think about that time, what was happening? You were having, you look at like the tons of those videos of like bikers just driving around the city, like in like just doing whatever they want, right? With the dirt bikes and the sport bikes and whatever, and you see the other incidents that were happening that were like totally like just getting totally out of hand. So you understand why I understand why Chell and why they pushed for the CRT. Okay, and again, it's not a bad idea in concept. It's just a bad in execution in that it's a piecemeal approach. And when we need a whole citywide approach. Okay. So that is the reality check that Zohran is going to face. He's going to go in there with well-sounding progressive talking points, and then reality is going to hit him. And once reality hits him, that's when he's going to have to go back to the old school. And the problem is I fear that we're going to get another Chell in there who's going to tell these guys, go out there and let's get him. And then they're going to have to deal with the DA. They're going to have to deal with the diaphragm law, the post George Floyd laws. And that's the problem.
Rob, before you jump in, I just want to say, Marlon, you're spot on. I think what happens is de Blasio and people like Mamdani, they retract so much from policing that it actually has that adverse effect that they have to over-police. And I think the CRT was exactly that. Listen, the boots on the ground when it comes to CRT, they're doing their job. They're addressing crime as it comes. The gun apprehensions right now are astronomical, and it's because crime is high. And every time, I used to tell my cops, every time we get a gun, there's 1,000 missed. So think all the guns that they're apprehending, there's 1,000 illegal firearms that they missed. So it just shows that, to me, more arrests and more guns apprehended is not a good sign. That's an indication that crime is actually out of control. So I think you're right. I think it has an adverse effect where Mamdani might want to retract so much from police work that we might have to actually over-police and actually compensate.
Yeah. If I may, just one quick thing. Now he will definitely have to do that. The issue is de Blasio, it never experienced the thing is, things were so well. De Blasio was handed such a good situation with the way the city was going at that point that it gave him a lot of room for the city for things to go downhill before we actually noticed it. And I'm not sure that Zohran could even get in there and wait 6 months before that reality check comes in, because the thing is, we've already. He doesn't have that room to fall before that same room that de Blasio had. That's gone now. So I don't think he can wait 6 months before he realizes, oh crap, we actually have to worry about quality of life issues. Yeah. So
you know what? You just nailed a great point. and John and I talk about this all the time, right? If you look at the first couple of years under de Blasio, it looks like an extreme success. And we drew away from intrusive police work. And the police officers that were being hired were not engaging in that type of police work. And the police department was doing well, right? And crime was pretty good. And I think it's because the successes they had with just holding on for so long. You're right. So they don't have that cushion room anymore, right? So it's almost like when you fall right now, there's nothing to hold back your fall. Spot on, brother.
Yeah.
Rob, take it away, Chief. I'm sorry, brother.
So, yeah.
I think-
Had
Go ahead,
to-
Lamar.
I'm sorry. Perps were still, when they looked at cops, they were still thinking that, they're still thinking that cops were in that early 2000s frame, that 2000s frame on the Bloomberg, and now they realize, oh, I can do basically whatever I want now. So it's different. I'm sorry, Rob.
No, absolutely. I think you're right on with that, Marlon. And here's the thing with the community response teams, right? So they go out there and they do what they're supposed to do, and they get a bunch of CCRBs, and that's going to be with them for the rest of their career, for the rest of their life. And like John always says, and I've said it a few times, even after death, and they will now have problems going to other units, going anywhere in the department and outside, anywhere else. So how do you do that? So you get rid of he comes in, he gets rid of the CRT. Mamdani comes in, he talks about getting rid of the strategic response group, right? Because they also get a lot of complaints because of they're out policing, demonstrations and riots. So yeah, he can easily drop that number if that's what he proclaims. He can have cops not respond to jobs. That's his other thing, right? He's going to have civilians respond. So that lessens CCRBs. So what is he going to do? Yeah, it's going to look like he did a great job, but then there's going to be a lot of people in the community that don't get what they want, right? It's going to be out of control. It's going to be run. The nuts are going to run the asylum. It's going to be crazy. You're going to get back to where they're going up and down the West Side Highway with quads and dirt bikes circling cars. It's gonna go all back to the craziness that it was, and the people that we know, the good people, are gonna be stuck in their houses, in their apartments, because they're afraid to go outside because it almost looks like the purge every day. So I think, yeah, could he tout it as a success when he gets the CCRBs down? Yeah, that to him it is, but it doesn't mean that the crime is down. It doesn't mean that the things that are happening in the city are gonna stop. No, they're gonna escalate. He's gonna escalate the crime by de-escalating the police.
Well, I think, Rob, though, bringing in civilians, it's not even a crime rate, because they could fudge numbers, as you know, and they could play games with that. The threat level, though, of the threat of something happening to you, your public safety, that will skyrocket. That number never gets measured. It never gets measured because there's no way to determine it. But when you walk out there, there's going to be a certain fear by bringing civilians around to do cops' job, because they have no guns, no body armor, no ass. Kind of like we saw in off-duty incident, same thing, where they're reacting without all the stuff you need. A radio to call backup. You're sending 2 civilians in, and you don't even know what you're walking into. You really don't. And that, I don't agree with sending civilians in. Like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. But to go back to why those CCRBs skyrocketed, remember when it was just a few months ago, I reported on this on my own X. I posted this. The CRT team, the reason it was created was they needed to get John Schell a star. John Schell cannot get promoted because he murdered someone. I don't know if people know that. He killed someone, and this grand jury that everybody thinks happened is under question because there's no grand jury minutes. But at his civil trial, John Schell was found guilty, and the city, they settled for $2.5 million. I mean, it was the most brutalist testimony. You can look this up. So John Schell could never get promoted. So the scheme was, Madry said, we'll come up with this CRT scam, and then I can put a star on Schell's shoulders. And that's what it was. It was a way to justify Schell being a chief when everyone would have said, we can't put this murderer as a chief, a tax cheat. I mean, there's so many things we could call him. But That guy had no business rising through the ranks the way he did. And then, of course, came Kaz Daughtry. They needed to give Kaz Daughtry something, how to justify his existence, because he's now skipped 8 ranks. How did he justify it? And they came up with this CRT team. And then what did he do?
Rocket fuel. So rocket fuel. He promoted by it.
They're scheming, and then what happens? Oh, I know the John Shell playbook. Let's get some young, impressionable cops, and we'll promise them the world, and they'll go out and do things that might have worked in 2010, but as of 2021 or 22, would probably get you not only complaints, but possibly fired, and you'll end up liable or in jail for things. And that's what CRT was. Now, after all, you've seen reports. I mean, Eric Umansky, I've had him on my show. They just wrote another article about how the federal monitor is now watching CRT and these complaints because it's the management. Now, if Mamdani, I'm not saying this guy's a genius. Well, this is all hypothetical if he even gets elected, but if he were to be the mayor and he's in charge, how does he manage the NYPD? Who is in charge, and what are they going to be doing? That is the real problem, because when you put failed leaders like John Shell and Kaz Daughtry and Jeffrey Madry running around who have sexual harassment things on them, all kinds of crazy things in charge, this is the end result. So that's why Eric Adams was a failure. Mamdani, it's who is he then going to pick underneath it if he's the mayor? Same goes for anyone else. If Curtis Lewa got elected, who would be underneath him? I would bet that Curtis would definitely know who he's definitely going to have the right voices in his ears as far as who would be in the police department. But this guy, you could tell already he's going to come in and he's got the sentiment of being anti-police. He feels that, the police department is picking on people, all this nonsense, the progressive way of thinking. So I would think that he probably won't have the right people in charge, which would lead to some other form of mismanagement. So I don't know if it'll be another CRT team, but those complaints were due to mismanagement, because under a real leader, you wouldn't be having cops act like cowboys doing car chases. You have to do things within the guidelines of the police department. This guy is saying, no, don't go do chases. And then the chief of department, Jeffrey Madry, says, no, follow the patrol guide. And you're in the middle going, what do I do? He's telling me to do one thing and he's standing over me. And this guy's at the puzzle palace saying another. And all they're going to tell you is what I always say. Officer, what does your training tell you to do? You got to follow the patrol guy, right? They're going to use that as an excuse. So you're stuck in the middle as the guy on the bottom of the totem pole is a cop. So again, those complaints were due to mismanagement, and it'll boil down to whoever's the next mayor. Who are you putting in charge and promoting, and who is your police committee? Like what is the function of the police department, and who's going to be running the mechanisms? Because if you're still running this mechanism, it's a failure, and we've stated it over and over again.
I got to laugh. Shout out to QC Beast 478, because I always use this term. I'm glad we got our friends here on the podcast. They're a huge part of our engagement. I always say Adams is a Norwegian rat. He could survive anything, and I think QC Beast is spot on. He says Shell is the Norwegian rat in this administration. Yes, when it comes to NYPD, I think Shell is the Norwegian rat. I mean, this guy survived being involved in what appears to be a bad shooting. He gets promoted through the ranks through rocket fuel also. Not at the same as Kaz Daughtry. I'll give him, he did pass several tests. So
he cheated his taxes too, Eric. Don't forget that one.
That's what was next. So I mean, I don't know what his identity was when he cheated on his taxes. It was probably Gene Lewis. If anybody's seen that name, that's the name of X. So, but spot on QC Beast. It's interesting, right? We're talking about Mamdani, right? And what will it look like for the NYPD? So, I just want to talk. There's actually a specific cop, because it shows what's going on with the NYPD and what would the justice system be like under Mamdani? Maybe worse. I don't know. There's a cop in the 4-4 precinct. His name is Kenny Vittoria, but watch his case. Active cop. gets involved in a situation, makes a gun call and intrusive police work. He is now facing 2 court cases in this justice system in the Bronx where he's now the perpetrator. And he's been charged with crimes of assault for taking down an armed perpetrator, fighting with someone with a firearm. He had a court case yesterday morning. So I hope the unions turned out. I hope the cops are supporting him. But what's interesting about that, right, is CCRB and this justice system has so much case going after this cop. And this cop is also in the military service member. So I've been watching this case. I've been watching different cases, Juan Perez, what happens to these cops. And he had a court case yesterday. But what's interesting, and the reason why that popped up, and I wanted to talk about that, is because the perpetrator he arrested in that case is also an alleged perpetrator involved in a gang takedown they just had. So they just had Operation Double Trouble within the police department's gang takedown in the Bronx. And one of the arrestees is this same person. So it just shows that in New York City, it's a pro-criminal society. We have a cop, now fighting for his own freedom, for making an arrest. And this same person is now involved in a gang takedown. And it just really reflected on my own career when I was fighting for my own job. And the perpetrator I arrested, who became a complainant with the CCRB, made an allegation against me. And while we had that administrative trial, that particular perpetrator / complainant was in jail in Rikers. So it just shows this is a pro-criminal society. Even with Eric Adams, the cop, who's the mayor, this justice system is anti-cop. This CCRB is anti-cop. So if Mamdani becomes mayor, Marlon, do you believe that the Civilian Complaint Review Board will get even more teeth? That this justice system will get even more teeth to go after cops? And with that being said, to me, the fear is what I always say, that your commanding officer, the upper echelon, they're guests in the NYPD, because the rank and file, you're a permanent resident. And when those guests leave, the investigations that come down, you're left by yourself. And that's, I think, Marlon, I think that's what you alluded to, is that the khaki pants, when Shell and the upper echelon start to leave, under Mamdani and this justice system, those cops may be targeted with their careers. So, Marlon, what are your thoughts on Civilian Complaint Review Board and this justice system under Mamdani? But by the way, shout out to Kenny Vittoria. I hope the unions are supporting him. Like I said, I've been watching this case. I wish you luck, and I hope it turns out good for you.
Yeah, Eric. If I may, I agree with all the things Sal says. Yeah, the CRT was to get them promoted, but I also think the CRT it was many things, and I think one of those things is that they needed a way to go after certain offenses in the city, in particular quality of life, because there's a lot of money that needs certain things to be done. That they let me give an example, right? I've said before that I think the reason why they started going after these fake plates is because they want to put in more cameras in the city. And you look at congestion pricing. If you have a city, if you have more congestion pricing, what's going to happen is people are going to try to find ways to obscure their plate and use fake plates. I think those are going to increase. So I believed that they wanted to set kind of they wanted to put like a fear in people that cops are out there and we're going to go after these fake plates if you decide to try and find a way to obscure your plate. And that's because they want congestion pricing in the entire city. And it starts in Manhattan, and we've heard discussions of it moving to Brooklyn, and I think that's going to be next, downtown Brooklyn. But my point in this is that that CRT was many things, and the problem is that it's many things, but it's not. It's a piecemeal approach, and they needed to change CCRB. You need to put pressure on the DAs to actually prosecute these cases and to actually have a transparent and a just due process for police officers as well, right? But with that said, under Zohran, I think we're going to get much of the same thing right now, because, even with Eric Adams saying that, Eric Adams 2.0 being a much more sensible, just from the outskirts of it, right? It looks like Eric Adams 2.0 is much more sensible. He's not partying all the time, or at least if he is, it's not being caught on camera, and it seems like he's more focused now, right? Even with that Eric Adams 2.0, are we still getting that change at CCRB? No. So what I think is going to happen is you're going to get much of the same thing with Zohan. I think you're going to again. I think you'd have a couple, the initial period when he gets in there and he follows through on all those progressive talking points, and then he reaches that wall, which is communities are going to be outraged that the quality of life is once again decreasing in their communities, and that's when we're going to see a change again, and we're going to go back to enforcement. And the problem with that is you're going to have inexperienced guys again, and you're going to see the stops and the complaints you're going to see them going up again, and you're not going to see any changes on the part of the DA's office or CCRB. So you'll have these young guys getting thrown to the wolves again, okay? Because that's all the city that under the last two administrations, and Zohan would be the third one now. You're seeing peace. You would see piecemeal approaches and not an entire change for the city, and that's because we've talked about it before. In order for the city to change, that means there's certain people that aren't getting crumbs, and they're not going to interfere with their crumbs. They'd rather throw the individual cops to the wolves rather than make systematic changes for the betterment of the city. And they're not going to do that because if they do that, a lot of people aren't going to get fed anymore. So it's an industrial complex, and unfortunately, that's the way things have been going.
I agree with Sal, though. I agree what he says. They'll put chiefs and inspectors or whatever in positions that compromise police officers, compromise the department for the betterment of them. You look at I think CRT was definitely one of them. I think the quality of life right now, right? That they're trying to get a chief in charge of that. So they create these things, and then they promote that person, and then that person leaves, and all those CCRBs and everything else that's happened to those police officers that have done their job are left to hang because nobody comes to their defense. I think we have a lieutenant that let a round go on the belt and shot somebody and killed. I think he killed somebody, didn't he? So I mean, I haven't heard anything of that case, right? Where did that get buried? Where is that? And the other thing is like you spoke about, Eric, is that now CCRB, yeah, they're going to have a huge bite, I think. But think about when we can't even use the complainant's criminal history anymore. Remember, they said they weren't going to put it in the summary anymore on the CCRB reports. And so then when the board reviews that, they don't even know that this guy is a convicted felon numerous times, and this police officer only has one CC. They'll know the police officer has a prior CCRB, but they'll think that this person making the complaint is an angel because there's no criminal history, and that's unfair. So I firmly believe, although I didn't see any of it in Zohran's policies or his Department of Community Safety, expanding CCRB, but I can guarantee you it's going to get the funding that they keep calling for, and it's going to get more. I would say younger, liberal investigators to police the police. So that's how I see CCRB going. I see him expanding that. That's going to be his catchphrase. That hey, if there's a problem, we'll get our CCRB investigators on it.
If you don't mind, Sal, before you jump in, I just want to get this thought out because I'm so glad that you mentioned that with CCRB because John and I just testified at the virtual monthly meeting when it comes to CCRB. And that's so important. That's been my argument for years. That summary, that closing, where you characterize the perpetrator / complainant really hurts the cop when you only mention the criminal conviction record. And the reason why is some people might be saying, well, why, right? Well, because of this, right? So active and retired cops understand this. But if you're just a civilian police enthusiast and you're interested in this podcast, you're a friend of the podcast, police officers, especially, and Rob, you could probably you'd understand this the most, especially specialized units. When there is an apprehension or a plan for an apprehension, the tactical plan is based on the arrest record of a person of interest, not the conviction rate. And you might ask why. And the reason why is this. Rhetorically speaking, if Sal and Rob are my two perpetrators that we're going to arrest, if me and Marlon are working a team, we're not going to look at just the conviction record, because the conviction record could reflect two convictions. One, a disorderly conduct, case was pled out, and one, maybe a theft. And meanwhile, a person of interest was arrested 50 times. 40 of them were alleged felonies, but because they have mob ties or gang affiliation, their victims were scared to testify. Those cases were dismissed. The evidence didn't hold up. We have issues with discovery, not in enough time. Technical issues, if that person does not get convicted. So the police officers don't make a tactical approach based on a conviction. They do it on an arrest. I'm so glad that you brought that up. People have to understand that. It's so important. That's why I say it's a mischaracterization of these cases, and it hurts the cop because the cop's reputation is on the line of allegations and substantiations, but the criminal, the person of interest, their case is only based on their convictions. That hurts the cop.
No, if I could jump in real,
yeah.
No, I'm sorry. So I want to jump in real quick. Totally agree. So here's the thing: a guy has 5 criminal possession of weapon charges. 5 times he possessed a weapon. In the Bronx, he's got 5 discons. That's what it was. That's what he's convicted of. I don't care if he was convicted of discon. I don't even care if the case was dismissed, DP, declined to prosecute it, or lost in a map hearing or whatever. What I do care is at 5 times our New York City police officers or other officers throughout the country have arrested this individual for a gun. So you know what I suspect? When I'm doing a warrant, when I'm hitting that door, that guy has a gun. That's what I need to know. And I absolutely 100% agree with you. Sorry, Sal.
Yeah, I'm saying with the CCRB thing, I probably would hedge my bet. If I'm the guess, I would say, and it's all hypothetical again, that Mamdani would probably expand their powers. They've been looking to expand their powers. So, I mean, they want to put people in precincts. It's some crazies, but more than likely, since they've been cut down, their budget's been cut under Eric Adams. If he really wants to defund the police, take some overtime and stuff away from the NYPD and add it to CCRB and expand them again. That's how you're going to get rid of people. That's, if I'm him politically, that's how I would do it. I'm just talking from a guy who would be in office. But here's something that no one's discussed. So, and Curtis Lee was on top of this, which is why people should be voting for him. Rob and Eric and Marlon, when we used to stand out there and protest, what used to be out there, which is where a lot of these CCOBs and lawsuits are coming from, we used to have mounted was out there. And when things got rough and people got rowdy, you put the horses out there. And you know what they would do? Back the crowd away without one cop putting a finger on anyone or doing anything crazy. It was Mr. Bill de Blasio that took the mounted away and said, this looks too rough for the crowd. We can't do this. It's too rough for the public to see him mounted out there. And then Mr. Eric Adams, swagger man, I'm a former cop. He never reinstituted mounted. So all the protests that then turned into riots that have numerous CCRBs and lawsuits attached to it, well, a lot of that could have been avoided by having mounted out there. Am I mistaken or not? I know Curtis Lewa says that's one of the top priorities he wants is to have mounted out there during protests. And I remember this because in Coney Island, every single parade you saw mounted out there. And that's how you would control rowdy people or anyone attempting to do anything. So why is mounted not out there? That should be asked, because that would probably lower many CCRBs and lawsuits that are stemming from protests.
Listen, I totally agree with you, because we were in charge of Mountain, and it was devastating to us that they took that away. It's like, really? I can remember times on Occupy Wall Street where we had the horses ready to go, and you know what? Just the horses and their presence alone quelled the problem, because they knew when the horses were coming in that they split the, and you know what? None of the horses ever got a CCRB either. So.
Nope.
No.
No, complain on the horse. Call animal.
Sal, do you think Mamdani is going to be an alumni of Consafritos?
Well, hey, hold on a minute. They might have a victory party at Sobro Gardens, because, you know, it's a vibe. You get stabbed there and nobody cares. And they arrest Jimmy Rodriguez, and then they give him a summons, and then everything's okay and they'll talk about it. But but Tish James has come out for Mamdani, and Tish James is the #1 person that used to go to Con Sofrito and is involved in all kinds of stuff. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So that I found very interesting, that she immediately came out for Mamdani, who then Bill Clinton, her friend, Jimmy's friend, also came out for Mamdani. So you could see the stars aligning for this guy in the party, as much as people want to say, you know, he's a socialist. So people, if he's a socialist, why are all these people? He's okay. So people say he's an anti-Semite, but Jerry Nadler just endorsed him the other day. He's Jewish, right? So it's not working. The constant rhetoric of saying anti-Semite, jihadist, terrorist is actually these people are lining up behind them. And some want to be close to the king. He's probably, if he wins the mayor, they want to be close to that. Because I think the party now is saying, we don't think Cuomo, they know Eric can't win, as much as everybody keeps saying he cannot win. And you'll see it in a general election. You will see it. And I'll tell you, I told you so. He can't win. Cuomo, they're kind of saying, all right, well, you lost, so you're out. You're the old news. And they're anointing him as the king. You're seeing it. It's slowly happening. And what can you say? But I don't know where the victory party is. If it is at Sobro Gardens, look out. You might get stabbed over there.
So at this point, I'd like to segue into something that Sal's going to get excited about. But before I say what that is, I think here's the argument when it comes to funding. So a lot of people, my phone's been blowing up where people are saying, how is Mamdani going to give out all these free items, right? Who's going to pay for that? Like, how are people going to sell that in comparison to Eric Adams? And I said, well, that's funny, right? Sal, who's Eric Adams' buddy that has cost the city millions? So why don't we pull up your buddy, your good friend to the stage, Timothy Pearson, right? So Timothy Pearson's legal fees have cost the city $500,000, and that number is still climbing when it comes to Eric Adams' administration. Eric Adams' administration has cost the city probably billions when it comes to legal funds. And we're talking about cases that shouldn't have met indemnification because Timothy Pearson, these allegations have no correlation to his geographical area of employment, his work employment. Sexual harassment cases have no business being under indemnification. Listen, is it tough to prove or disprove these cases? Yes. Are they terrible cases to investigate? Yes. But is that something that should be indemnified for someone that's in the police department? An allegation of sexual harassment has nothing to do with your performance or your work experience. So that's absolutely crazy to me. But of course, so that's my argument, where people say, well, how can Mamdani give out all this free stuff? Look at all the money spent in this administration under Eric Adams. And I'm sure Marlon will go into also about how that goes into private contracts also. I mean, look at this right here. $500,000 for Timothy Pearson, who shouldn't be in this administration anyway.
Well, you know what? That goes in line with Eric Adams' poor choices for his poor choices for people in his administration, and he's already at it again because one of the consultants for his campaign has been accused of strangling and assaulting a woman in a Manhattan hotel. So, Eric, he seems to love guys who all have sexual assault allegations on them or sexual harassment allegations on them. Yeah. But yeah, I actually think that oh, before we go, QC Beast had a comment in the chat. He asked if the CRT is going to continue under Zohan, and as is the case with many of these units, they just get renamed and remarketed. So CRT is already still there. It's maybe Q teams now, or I don't know what they're going to call it next. But all this is they just rename, rinse and repeat. So
Marlon, I have a new patch. It's a hammer and sickle on the side, and over here says NYPD.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually think that Zohan's administration is going to have a lot more discipline than Eric Adams, though. So I personally don't think you're going to see these many this nonsense with Zohan, because Zohan's from a different time. Zohan's a younger guy, and Eric Adams, I think Eric Adams is from a time frame where this is it's just this behavior seems to be more prevalent, and I just don't think Zohan's going to do it. I also don't think he's going to do it because Zohan, he all the progressive groups that are in his camp, I don't think they're going to I don't think that would work, with his base, so.
Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, let's look at what Adams surrounds himself, right? So he's got Pearson, Banks. Banks was involved in a federal case. Banks's XO, Mike Harrington, pleaded guilty. So here we have another thing where somebody pleads guilty in a case, and then the original defendant is let off scot-free, right? And you think about Shell, right? Killed somebody, whatever, or allegedly. You think about all he surrounded himself with, all in criminals, and yet he still continues to use city money to give this person the benefit. Yet a police officer, I knocked my phone over. Yet a police officer that does something has trouble getting indemnified and getting his case covered because of you're guilty or whatever. So it's just so certain unfairity that the whole thing. It's just not really how he can surround himself. So his administration is sinking, and I think Mamdani, I think he's going to surround himself with better people, but I don't know who. And I haven't seen his who he hangs out with, who his friends are. But it's going to be another case of I might not need the most attuned guy to the particular position, but I'm going to take care of my friends, more crumbs for his friends. So I think either way, we're at a loss right here.
Yeah, if I can, I think Zohan's going to surround himself with a lot more academics and these progressive types who've never really had jobs before. But their jobs have been in like government or in academia, and that's whereas Eric Adams kind of tended to be, I've said it before. I think a lot of guys in his administration were street guys, guys who you look at the background of Pearson and Banks and all these guys, and I just think they're not equipped for that high. Those heights of government, the professionalism that you need for those heights of government, they're not equipped for that. And I think the difference is with Zohan, you're going to get people who are kind of like on the other side of the spectrum. They're academics, and that's all they know of, and they don't have any real world like boots on the ground kind of experience.
Yeah, Marlon, I think that when you talk about that, that's I'm losing my train of thought here, but I think that Mamdani just he really just caters to people because they see him as a reflection, like, okay, here's someone that's young, intelligent, and would surround himself by trustworthy people. That's what I think. I think they see him more as trustworthy, because when you talk about Eric Adams in that aspect and his friends, they look like a bunch of street hustlers. They sound like street hustlers. They look like street hustlers. They dress like street hustlers. And you know what? They brag about being street hustlers as a kid. Eric Adams brags about it. Mamdani comes off as young, intelligent, like a calm, good demeanor, kind of like a good disposition. So to me, I think they see that as maybe not necessarily a scholar or an intellect, but someone that's calm and someone maybe that they could trust. I think some people like Eric. They like Eric Adams because that's a guy maybe you want to hang out with, right? You want to party with all the time. But when it comes to running a city, I think they see Mamdani as, like you said, young, energetic. So he really caters to the young people, kind of trustworthy, right? Probably surround himself with people. Like, I could see that more of on the educated side of things, as far as book people, book guys, but not a bunch of street hustlers.
The street hustlers. I'll say this. So that Tim Pierce, and this is the prime example of why I don't care what you think of this Mamdani and this was fear mongering, because there's other candidates you can vote for. This is why Eric Adams won't win and can never be elected to anything again. The guy can't run a convenience store, let alone be the mayor. Okay. First of all, Tim Pearson, the $500K it's cost for those that are still pending. He also has a $500,000 or something settlement. He's already cost the city himself over $1 million. Okay, over $1 million. There's still future litigations involved. In the same circle, it's Eric Adams himself that has a sexual assault case. I don't know if you guys remember that woman. That case is proceeding forward. God knows what that's costing right now. They won't tell you. And Eric is trying to ignore this. If I'm Mamdani, I'm screaming, this guy hates women. He's sexually assaulted them, because he's saying he won't even talk about Eric Adams. I guess his shorty from a long time ago had a problem with him, okay? So we have Tim Pearson. Tim Pearson in his case. You also have everything that we heard about Jeffrey Madry, John Shell, who's in that as well, Kaz Dordry. There's numerous people involved. Eddie Caban, you're still paying for their sexual assault and harassment lawsuits. That violates General Municipal Law 50K2, because I've never heard to this day someone explain how sexual harassment and assault falls under the scope of an executive and an administration's duty in the mayor's office or in the NYPD. I don't know, I can sexually assault people on and off duty as a cop, and the city pays for it. Because that's what's going on with Eric Adams. He has mismanaged the city to a degree that you're almost bankrupt. $8 billion in migrant shelter scam, sending migrants all over all the working class neighborhoods. You woke up and there's an illegal on your corner. And he's not just an illegal, he's a gangbanger on top of it. That's Eric Adams. He said, come one, come all. So the constant rhetoric from these MAGA grifting, I mean, it's just ridiculous. These Trump sycophants that pray to this guy like he's a god, they're going to be the destruction of you all if you follow them. They're in a cult. You need to make an informative decision here. Eric Adams is a failure at every single level. And the quicker December 31st comes is the quicker and the fastest way that New York City will be liberated from the worst 4 years in the history of New York City with this mayor. He's the most incompetent and corrupt human being I've ever seen. And I unfortunately I didn't have an interaction with him. I kind of ran into him, when I was like, but there isn't one person that could tell me, unless you're corrupt or hanging out with him in his nightclub scandals. Remember they were extorting people in nightclubs too? I mean, that's all on pause because of this Trump. If Trump didn't pause his cases, everyone would be in jail right now. You'd be hearing about grand juries left and right and indictments. And that's what's been the pause. Okay. That man cannot run the city. Stop saying Eric Adams. You have Cuomo, Mamdani, Jim Walden, and Curtis Lewa. Me, I would pick Curtis Lewa. Anyone who says he doesn't have a shot, oh, so we're going to put the corrupt criminal who's got like Gotham City running underneath him. That's the answer, because he keeps saying, oh, in the last 4 years, I'm going to fix this. You wrecked this, Eric. You wrecked the city. How are you going to fix something you wrecked that right now you could do it as mayor? And in fact, you're saying you're going to fix this when? November 5th, the day after you get reelected. This is absurd for people. I don't know what low information is like going like everywhere. Clearly, there's a ton of low information people. You got to look at it from what I'm saying. It'll make sense. And another thing is, we can't be taking a nomination from someone who won it fair and square in the Republican Party, and he's got to step down and give it to him that no one elected, that Republicans hate. This guy fired a ton of Trump supporters, Republicans, because they didn't want to capitulate to their mandate. And the court said they had to go back to work. And guess what he did? Now I'm going to fight that, just like he's paying for all these things. It doesn't matter to him because, like Eric said, he's probably in the millions, if not, $500,000, who knows, in legal defenses that the city's paying. So once again, Eric Adams is a failure. He's probably a failure in life in general. The guy has, I don't know, but he somehow has survived all this way because he's got a scam going with people. Now he's got this new one with the crypto stuff behind the scenes. My advice, stay away from him. He's not going to win. He's going to get crushed in this general election. Vote for Curtis Lewa if you have any sense of trying to save the city. And I don't know what Mamdani's policies are. I would like to actually have him on my show to discuss some things. But again, don't call this guy an anti-Semite, a jihadist, and a terrorist because you're only ensuing his landslide victory if you keep talking like that.
I had taken some time yesterday. I was trying to take some notes and say to myself, why would people vote for Mamdani in New York City compared to Eric Adams, right? I mean, I think at this point, Cuomo could be a contender, but I think he's out. Sliwa, unfortunately, I just don't see a strong push from Republicans. Jim Walden, I love his policy right now with CCRB. But to me, I see right now it's Eric Adams as the independent versus Mamdani. That's the way I see it. Now, to me, they're the same thing at the surface, right? They're the same. They defund the police. They are both Democrats, and I think they're both socialist in many ways. But what Mamdani sells to the people is he doesn't even have to sell himself or sell his policies. I think all he has to do is say, look at the failed policies of this administration. For one, we showed you today, right? The complaints against cops have risen substantially under Eric Adams. Now, we know why, because we all served in the police department, and the reason is because crime is up. So the cops are doing their job. More intrusive police work equals more complaints. Also, a lot of these complaints are self-generated by the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and goes also what Marlon was saying, because we have the khaki pants unit that is out there doing intrusive police work. So, also stops are up. When it comes to stop, question, possibly frisk, there's a lot of opposition in New York City, and stops are up under Eric Adams. Even though Eric Adams was an advocate in the fight against stop, question, frisk, it's a tool utilized more now than ever because crime is up. So Mamdani and his Gen Z voters are not with stop, question, possibly frisk. They don't like intrusive police work. They don't like to see the police at all for the most part. And then we have the homeless problem we told you about. When it comes to mental issues, mental health issues, and substance abuse, there's no solution from Eric Adams. We see this administration just completely fail. What was their solution? Arrest the homeless. Arrest your way out of a problem. And people don't want to see that, especially Gen Z voters. They don't want to see us arrest. So Mamdani doesn't have to sell himself. He just has to sell failed policies. So what do we also have? And we just said it, right? With this campaign, we have money mismanaged, spent at an astronomical rate in this administration for Eric Adams street hustler thugs like Tim Pearson, because they're a bunch of sexual deviants and they cost in the city millions and billions of dollars. And then what do we also have with this administration? Potential corruption, an appearance of impropriety. And Marlon said it. I don't just looking at Mamdani and his appearance and his demeanor, he doesn't appear to have. We don't see any signs of corruption. So I think there's another thing we haven't touched on yet. DEI, right? Eric Adams talking about this is the chocolate administration. We have the first this, the first that. Now we potentially could have the first Indian and Muslim American New York City mayor. How does that affect the NYPD with this DEI movement? What are your thoughts on that, Marlon? Does it change anything? Does it get better? Does it get worse? Do we dive more into this DEI movement with the first Indian Muslim mayor of New York City?
I absolutely believe you're gonna get more DEI, but see, the thing is, Zohran is an ideologue. You know, he's an ideologue is a person that strongly advocates for a particular position, and they're kind of inflexive. And Zohran is a progressive. You know, true and true, he's a progressive. Whereas Eric Adams, we still don't know what the real Eric Adams is. You know, what's Eric Adams' beliefs? You know, Eric Adams 1.0 is completely opposite of Eric Adams post-Trump. You know, and the only thing we know for sure about Eric Adams is Eric Adams loves and believes in Eric Adams. You know, and whereas Zohran is a progressive. You know, and with that said, I believe you're going to get more DEI. But unlike Eric Adams, who is again, he's a street guy. Okay, Zohran, the DEI you're going to get is more. I think it's going to be more refined, and it might be harder for you to tell outright that it's DEI. Okay, because again, Zohran is going to lean on academics and all these people behind him. And again, I've mentioned before, a lot of these academics are a large part of the problems in the NYPD, like in the Strategic Initiatives Bureau, which there's a lot of policies that come out of that, including the DEI stuff that guys have to watch training videos for training videos. Okay. So I think you will, as a matter of fact, get more of that, but you're going to get it. You're going to get a little more refined. So the guys
those training videos suck, by the way. Those training videos suck. I just want to say those training videos, they just suck.
It's more indoctrination videos than training, you know? So the guys you're going to get in positions are going to be a lot more competent than the people that Eric Adams puts it. Because, again, Eric Adams believes in Eric Adams, and that's his only beliefs. So he'll say that he'll talk up DEI, but the people he's putting in positions, are his cronies, specifically his cronies. Okay, he's not even. We've talked about this before. Again, he's not even consistent with DEI. You know, because the people that he puts there are incompetent people that he knew and are people of his network, him and Banks and that whole network of people that he puts in there. But he'll tell you it's we need to, he'll use the progressive talking points to get it to get around questions about those people's competency. So
I wish that, like, I agree with Sal, like, don't go after Mamdani because of his race. You got to leave that out of there. Most of the things that he's doing is already policies that are in the city that aren't functioning properly. So, I mean, that's where you need to address the problem. Go after what, and Adams has all these failed policies in his back pocket. So to put him forward and think that he's going to be the savior because he's, as Sal will say, blue MAGA, it's not going to save everybody. And it's not going to bring everybody back and say, hey, I'm going to support him because he's blue MAGA and he has more experience and stuff. No. And I agree with what Marlon says. Mamdani's going to bring in these intellects, and they're going to come in with a minimal amount of experience, and they're just going to be able to put stuff on paper that probably is not going to work because it's not been tested, it's not been proven. And then are there going to be DEI hires? I absolutely believe 100% that within the department, Indian Muslim community will be promoted and brought up to the upper echelons ranks of the department so that they mirror what the mayor looks like and what the mayor wants. And also that the mayor can now get his policies and his procedures pushed down into the police department. So I 100% agree that it will be DEI, different than what we've seen in the past, but there definitely will be DEI. And I think, like I've said earlier on in the podcast, the old white man is out. And there'll be a lot of retirements from the old white man, the guys that usually stay to those 63, to their last day. They'll be forced out. They'll be told, you got to go. I know chiefs that were told to go. They weren't on. They were told the department's going in a different direction, and you're not going with us. And they were told up in the PC's office, and they were forced to leave. And I'm going to tell you that's going to happen. That's going to happen again.
Yeah, I keep seeing in the comments this, Curtis Lewa has no shot stuff. And look, Eric Adams has no shot, not Curtis Lewa. Okay, Eric Adams is the corrupt. So you're telling me you're going to vote for a street hustling wannabe thug who's a criminal for mayor again after you complained for the last 4 years? Then everything that's coming your way, you deserve it. You have other candidates. I mean, just a few months ago, it was Mamdani that had no shot. You said, oh, he can't win. He's polling at 1%. Now look. That's how quick politics change. You have to change with everything. And again, Eric Adams' favorability in New York City is 28% and less. Donald Trump, his favorability in New York City is 36%. The MAGA endorsed candidate will get slaughtered in the mayoral race because New York City, as Roger Stone says best in Stone's rules, and one of his rules are hate is a stronger motivator than love. So they're going to come out, the blue-haired people are going to get registered and say, I'm voting against the Trump guy. The Trump guy, he's our enemy. You want Trump to stay the hell away from New York City where he's not liked and not wanted. You want Trump to stay away and make this about whoever's running and their policies. Remember that the Republicans that won in New York City in the past were moderate to liberal Republicans. Look back at Giuliani. He was a liberal Republican. He wasn't about deporting people. Look back. That was a different time. Bloomberg was a Republican because he was running as the understudy to Rudy Giuliani because Mark Green was going to be mayor until 9/11 happened. Then, of course, people wanted to stay with the steady hand. Luckily, they decided to keep Bloomberg. But then Bloomberg ran as an independent. This crowd that wants Mamdani is the same crowd that voted for de Blasio. And guess what? They voted for Eric Adams because he has the same exact policies. They all have the same policy. That's what New York City wants. You could try to go on Fox News, which none of these people care about, or Newsmax and try to push Eric Adams. It's not going to work. The numbers do not lie. And as far as what Curtis could do, the Republican in New York City already has about 28, 30% of the vote if you're going to be in the mayoral election. You have 3 Democrats vying for the other 70%. Where are you getting that he has no shot? You are literally believing something. By the way, I don't want to point this out right now, but it looks like your Messiah who said there was no ceasefire. They're just firing things into Tehran right now. So I don't know what's going on in the Mideast, but the guy you say is a god is a man, and you really need to look at yourself in the mirror because you're supposed to be praying to God, not praying to a man. This guy is not a god. He is a man. I am saying I voted for the guy 3 times, but I'm not in this echo chamber cult, whatever you want to call it. You need to make up your own mind. And you have to do what's best for the people. Unfortunately, like I said, New York City, there's many low information people out there on both sides of the aisle. I'm sorry, it's both sides of the aisle these days. So you need to make an informative decision. But to say that Curtis Lewa has no chance, Mamdani had no chance months ago. People laughed at him. You're not laughing right now, right? So that's how quick things could change. Curtis Lee was a known commodity. People trust him. People actually love him in New York City. Why don't you go out and see him? Because when he's walking the streets, and I've been there, Curtis. They're not doing that for Eric Adams. Curtis. See, name recognition will matter. He has a chance. Stop saying he doesn't, because he does. It's Eric Adams who has no chance and should leave. By God, the guy should just resign. At this point, you're all screaming about Mamdani. If you had a couple months of Jumaane Williams, you kind of see what it would be like, right? I mean, you guys, everyone complains about something, but here's a fact. Universally, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you're a socialist, you're conservative, you're a liberal, you're a, whatever you identify as, you all hate Eric Adams because his favorability is under. I've never seen a favorability like that from Mayor. So get with it. And if you really want, you listen to what we're saying. We're laying down this guy's policies. We've mentioned it's Curtis Lee. We could pull up his policies on his website right now, and you compare the two, and then you will decide. But if you let some guy in Washington, D.C. decide for you, or his sycophant like grifter club like D.C. Drano and Benny Johnson, you're doomed. You're doomed, and it's over. So it's up to you. The faith is up to you, and especially all the police officers. Your voice should be the loudest, but they're drowning you out too. For Kaz Daughtry and John Shell, two guys that are ruthless clout chasers and have a history of impropriety. That's what's going on today in the world. I don't know what else.
Wait, you're telling me cheating on your taxes, that's impropriety? I mean, it got him promoted to the chief of department. I think I made a mistake. That's why I couldn't make captain. I had CCRBs. I should have cheated on my taxes. If I would have cheated on my taxes, I would have got promoted.
You should have. You would have been okay.
It's crazy. Right, that's why I told the unions. Lou Turco, if you're listening, I know you helped me out my son. I appreciate it, but I'm still going to talk about the issues. At the time when I could not get promoted to captain, I was told because of the civilian complaints. So I said my argument was, show me a chief on this job that hasn't done something worse and doesn't have a bigger infraction. Then I'll say, okay. You never mentioned John Shell. I mean, I should have cheated on my taxes. Anyway, I don't want to get too much off topic, but this is why I love Friday roundtables. I love great points here. Awesome. Listen, we're 2 hours and 17 minutes into this. Like, share, and subscribe. Friday roundtable is great. You have a perspective. You can't get this anywhere else, where you have 4 former members of the NYPD with a lot of experience. I mean, we have a former chief here. We have a former cop who's made numerous arrests. We have a former investigator, detective, and a former lieutenant myself. We have a lot of experience here, a lot of perspective. John normally would be on, but he's out there shaving his chest right now, getting ready for shirtless videos. So there's a great comment here. There's a great comment here, and I think this is a reflection of the entire show today. It goes to Davey117. I think there's a new friend to the podcast, Daebi. It's Davey. Says, face value, it doesn't sound bad. I'm just going to stop right there. You're right. That's my point. That's why I came up with this idea. I'm like, why don't we talk about what does the NYPD look like under Mamdani? Because face value doesn't sound so bad. It's like, wait a minute. So we're not going to have a corrupt administration? So the police officers are not going to have excessive overtime, so they won't be tired? The police officers are going to have a professional environment? They're going to have a solution to the homeless problem? The civilians are going to help them? Sounds great, right? But that's why when we talk about these things and we actually get under the surface. The comment goes on and says, who wants to deal with EDPs? Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, what? Hey, doesn't sound so bad. The cops don't have to deal with it. Let these civilian people that are trained to deal with it, you know? And then he says, reduced overtime would improve quality of life. Yeah, these cops, the candle is burning on both ends. But deep down, here we go. Here is where Davey's right. But deep down, we know he probably wants to cut NYPD down, which he said he already talked about defunding, and wants to negotiate a contract and has malintent. Now, I don't know if he has malintent or not, but I do know, based on what he said, what we've heard, and his brief exit when he was on this podcast for an interview, we didn't really get a chance to discuss the real deep into the issues that he wants to defund the police. And I think that the issues that we discuss here really cement what's going on. I think when it comes to DEI, I think that Eric Adams is actually not involved in DEI at all. I think he's sold this idea that, I have the chocolate administration and I'm about diversity, equity, inclusion. Really, his DEI means loyalism. They should just get rid of the word DEI. It's loyalist, right? If you're John Shell and you're old, male, pale, and stale, but you're loyal to Eric Adams, you're good to go. Cass Daughtry just happens to be black. Philip Banks just happens to be black. The people in his circle just happen to be black. He doesn't care that they're black. I guess what? Marlon, last I checked, I think you're black. He could give two shits because Marlon was discarded from the NYPD. He fits everything for DEI, right? He's diverse. He's black, right? And talk about equity inclusions. He's intelligent. He's not there anymore because he's not an Adams loyalist. If Marlon, if you grew up with Eric Adams, you'd be deputy commissioner right now. You could be unvaccinated. You'd be deputy commissioner. You could cheat on your taxes as long as you're loyal to Eric Adams. So you know what, Davey 117, face value, it doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah. I just gotta say, so Ron, if you want to put that up, I came across this on the internet and I thought this is perfect, because this perfectly describes the election. Yeah, we got alien versus predator here, and it doesn't matter between Eric Adams and Zohran who wins, we're all gonna lose. But you know who's really gonna win here? You know who's really gonna win? All the corporations and their contracts. Those guys are gonna win. Yeah. But not us. We're losing. So
and political consultants who are screaming that that Eric Adams should become the Republican so they can make money. Or the Steve Bannon acolytes. I'll just narrow it down to that. Just look. You guys look at what I'm saying. And by the way, their ties back to who? Emil Bove, Boris Epstein. I mentioned this before. Bannon is all over this. Artie Idala was his lawyer, another Eric Adams sycophant. You guys do it all you want, and you're going to see that I'm correct. You just hate. This is the thing: is you hate when someone's right, and it's unfortunate because your heart tells you that Curtis is the correct pick. That's like deep in your soul, but your brain is telling you Bannon, God, Trump, no, Eric, and that's where you're being pulled. But inside, it's wrong, and you're seeing it. And I wonder with everything with Trump. I mean, God damn it! I voted for this guy 3 times, and I lost my career because of this guy. Okay, and all I want is the guy to succeed. And so far, yeah, he's done some good things, but the Eric Adams connection is a head scratcher. The crypto stuff makes sense, but I'm flabbergasted by the people demanding that the man that won the primary for the Republican Party want this guy to give it to Eric Adams, just like didn't they want Joe Biden did it to Kamala Harris? You saw how that worked out. I mean, I thought we had a system and we believed in things, but apparently not. It's just the sycophant club. They all said, Eric Adams, let's go. Let's forget what he did. Oh, he fired Sal Greco. He fired Marlon Bethel. He pushed out a ton of Trump supporters. He destroyed the city. No. Now Trump is there, so he's good. Like that is, I hate to say it, sounds like a cult. No, when you blindly follow something without even questioning, hey, what are we all doing? Remember? That's all I'm gonna. That's all I really have to say with that. It's just it's really mind numbing to think that and you haven't even seen one internal poll yet, not one. Because the last poll I saw that had Curtis Sliwa and everything in there showed Mamdani on the bottom, and now he's on the top. So things could change just like that, just so you know. But I know one thing: the criminal Eric Adams cannot win. That is a fact. So,
yeah, if you think about it, Sal. Just think about how Eric Adams 1.0 and Eric Adams 2.0, right? So if you think about that, if you think that through, wouldn't that make you want to vote for Zohran? Because if the pressure from Trump could turn Eric Adams 1.0 into Eric Adams 2.0, then couldn't the Trump administration put pressure on Zohran to keep him in line?
I think that's a great point. And again, it goes back to everything we're saying. If you just all the talking points that we've put today, it makes him sound like a viable candidate, right? We haven't done a deep dive into it. People actually look at the surface, but you're right, and they could put the push for him. I don't know. I just, at this point, even with all this being said, I'm going to go back to what I always say. Eric Adams is a Norwegian rat, and he can survive anything. I still think Eric Adams could come up and rise in these polls. I know right now, I mean, he's in last place, but I don't know. With the backing he's got from MAGA, it's scary. It's scary.
Eric, I usually agree with you, but I'm gonna disagree with you. I think Adams has hit diversity. Okay, because think about it. His diversity is that he has some people that do sexual harassment. He has people that are corrupt and do criminal taxes. He has people that have shot people. So he has surrounded himself with diversity. I mean,
He's got some right. His diversity is a little different. You're right. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Well, you forgot, Rob, the extortion. They're extorting
and
nightclubs.
extortion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
going to Coastal Fritos with illegals and stuff like. I mean, that's his diversity. It's just not what we normally expect it to be. But he's there. He's there.
But
So-
he's Blue MAGA, Rob. Vote for him. You have to. The Messiah said so. And the Bannon sycophant said so. Just vote.
You know what? Trump. Sam, when you talk about this, you're right. You know, all these X Spaces we've been doing for about, I'd say, like, it's a good solid year. We've been going on X Spaces, even more, right? Supporting Trump. But I always said it. You said it. I got to say it. Kudos to everybody on this finance field. John always says it. We always say he's a man, and a man should be critiqued. And sometimes on these X Spaces, they would talk about Trump like he's the Messiah. Like, God forbid you say something bad. And I think it's important that we don't see someone as a Messiah. We see them as a man, because if we see him as a Messiah, we make mistakes. And if we see them as a man, we actually make honest critique. And I think we should critique. We should, even if we think Trump is the excuse me, even if we think Trump is the man for the job, we still have to critique his failures or mistakes for improvement. I mean, would it be great if Rob, if you're back in the NYPD and you're a chief right now, and myself and Marlon and Sal, you think we're great, but we make a mistake. If you never tell us that we made a mistake, well, to me that means you really don't care, because you don't want to see us get better. And I think we have to be honest. And now people, I think they get on us because we critique Trump, like, oh, you guys, oh, now you don't like Trump. No, we never said that. But we have to critique and be honest about his successes and his failures. And unfortunately, in many cases, his failures are who he chooses to surround himself with, Trump, and this whole supportive system behind Eric Adams, it to me is a complete failure.
Eric, I learned that in ESU, right? So we're on a stack, we're going to make an entry, and I say, hey, let's do it like this, this, and this. And everybody will say, no, we're not doing that. No disrespect, but that's not the way we do it. This is the way we do it. And if you don't tell me that I'm wrong, then I don't grow, because the next time I go on that job, I know what we're supposed to do. And absolutely, you don't surround yourself with everybody, all the yes men. That doesn't help you, right? You don't grow.
Right.
You've got to have people that are going to confront you and tell you what you did wrong. And you know what? Maybe you don't change, but it's always registered in your head. And eventually, I remember bosses, like, you would tell them, hey, this is wrong. Do it this way. No, I'm the boss. We're doing it this way. And then you tell them like 3-4 times, all right, shut up. I'm the boss. I do it. And then a week later, that same boss comes over and says, we're going to start doing it this way because it's better. Like, yeah, exactly. That's what we just told you last week, you idiot. But all right, now it's your idea. It's so much better. But you know what? You're right. You gotta take the criticism, and you should learn from your criticism. I mean, otherwise you haven't learned anything, right?
Yeah. Think how much that would have helped Eric Adams if there was somebody in his administration telling him in the beginning, hey, stop this partying nonsense needs to stop. You need to stay focused. You need, if he had been Eric Adams 2.0 at the beginning, I think the sky, we've said it before, the sky might have been the limit for him, because he's a guy that Norwegian rat in him can move in so many different spaces. You have Eric Adams. One day he's talking to like street guys who are like like gang members yesterday. The next morning, Eric Adams is in a economic forum in like talking to like billionaire CEOs, you know.
And
So he's
Marlon,
a guy
in
who could
between, he's
float
at the
in many
nightclub.
circles.
In between, he's at the nightclub. So
Yeah. So
Marlon,
how much would you have been a better off for
Marlon,
that?
I see the meme right now, and it's people voting, and it's Eric Adams as a Norwegian rat. So I can see it now. I've been saying it forever, man. I mean, I know people are like, what is a Norwegian rat? Just look it up. Norwegian rats, they survive anything. They swim through anything. I mean, think about it. We've been through the craziest snowstorms, right? I remember in the rear of PSA 7, like sometimes these snowstorms were so bad. They had a huge problem with rats back there, and like nobody could be outside. It's like all of a sudden you would see some rat just come out of like the snow, like, oh my god, how did this thing survive that thing? You couldn't even get a car out, but the rat just got right through. That's Eric Adams, man. This guy could survive anything. I don't know how he does it. It's pretty impressive. So, listen, like I said, 2 hours and 30 minutes into it, I want to thank the chat. The chat was awesome today. These comments are great. We want you to engage our friends and listeners. It's very important. I love the Friday roundtables. I think we go over a lot of information. I think we should start getting close to wrapping it up. I think we discover a lot of stuff. We're talking about corruption here. We're talking about DEI, the homeless issues. We're talking about problems with mental health. We're talking about this failed administration, how much money they spent, just so mismanaged on these lawsuits because they're sexual deviants, right? And we talk about DEI, and you're right. This administration is not diverse in color or ethnicity. It's diverse in potential corruption. It's diverse in sexual deviant cases. I mean, you know what? And someone said it earlier, Marlon. You know, I said if you were corrupt and you grew up with him, you'd be fine. But you know, if you were Eric Adams' friend, you would have to be corrupt. And you're right. No one told Marlon. You're right. No one told Eric, like, listen, dude, this isn't right. You know why they didn't tell him? Because Eric Adams was smart. He put people in his administration that were morons in comparison to him, so that he has leverage. He didn't have, smart people. I always said it, and you guys probably said it too. I want to surround myself with people that are smarter than me, and that's what this group also. I say all the time, like, man, I can't. I would love to learn the stuff Marlon does behind the scenes. John does. I want to learn what John knows about politics. I want to learn what Sal knows about politics. I want to learn some leadership stuff from Rob and Ron. So I always want to surround myself with intelligent people. And Jack too. I learned some stuff behind the scenes. So. But not Eric Adams. He doesn't want to surround himself with people he can learn from. He wants to surround people that he can control.
Well, Eric, I could say this. I'm looking right now. This is from Dan Manarino. He says, sources tell me that Andrew Cuomo is not dropping out of mayor's race. He will remain on the ballot in November. Deadline is today to drop out of independent lines, and he won't be doing that. Sources say they want to see what the ranked choice simulation shows. So I'm telling you guys, Eric, with Cuomo in there, it's pretty much done that he should drop out. He has no shot. And on the side note, right now, breaking, Iran foreign minister rejects further nuclear negotiations with the United States. So I guess Trump should really worry about that instead of helping out Eric Adams. Like I said, you can critique anyone all you want, but, it's a ceasefire, it's this, it's that. I mean, he's got a lot of issues. He's very good on some things he's not. I'm just throwing it out there. I am not in the echo chamber. You got to call balls and strikes.
But Sal and Marlon, you and I said this also. 4 months left. That's an eternity in politics, no? 4 months. Yep. Could it change? I mean, Marlon, you and I both said the other day. I say, and I'm still going to stand by it. I don't want it. I still think Eric Adams wins. Marlon, what do you think?
Yeah. I absolutely think that there's a lot of money behind Eric Adams, and they have a vested interest in him getting into the mayor's office. And I think when you see the way things have been going, you look at those connections to Brock Pierce and the PayPal mafia and Trump, and these guys are basically, you don't know it, but their will is being pushed onto America. The direction that things are going. I've been posting up how like the Federal Reserve dropped the rules about crypto, so now it's becoming more into the financial system. You take a look at overseas policy. You behind all of that are the PayPal guys. Okay, so with them exerting their will on America and Eric Adams firmly in their corner, you know, I can't. I think it'd be foolish to say that Eric Adams has no chance of winning. And when we're talking about billionaires, billions of money, and when you have that much money, there's you can move, you can shift the will of things, you know. And a lot of it may be happening behind the scenes. Certainly, I believe it's happening in the case of influences like Dom Lucari, who all of a sudden starts posting John's video about Eric Adams that's months old. He posted it as breaking news.
Yeah.
Like, are we supposed to think that's coincidence that these mega
right.
influencers are all of a sudden doing that? Yeah. So I think it's happening behind the scenes, and I think it's naive of us to think that with 4 months left that Eric Adams still can pull out a victory. And I just won't say it.
Yeah, I mean,
there's too much money involved there for them, you know.
That's what I say. Like the you know, I talk about this, right? And you talk about it too, the economic wheel in New York City right now. If Eric Adams does not get reelected, there's a lot of people that have to leave New York City. There's a lot of money invested in this real estate. Look at the South Bronx. Look at the Sobro area. You know, you talk about Sobro Garden. Sobro Garden is in the heart of this real estate buildup right now. Where does Eric Adams hang out? Sobro Garden. There's no coincidence. All the stuff fits together. This economic wheel that's going on. And I tell you what, for me, when I look below the surface with Mamdani, to me, it's scary what could happen to these pensions. Because if he's actually going to do what he says, you know, based on taxpayer money to have this wheel of free stuff, what happens to our pensions? Our pensions are an asset. It's based on taxpayer money. So it's scary right now. If those, it's based on imbalance, our pensions, right? If, you know, people working to pay for it. And if he's using taxpayer money, what does that say for our pensions? That, I mean, Rob, I'm always scared of that. People think these pensions are like magic and they can't be penetrated. No, they can be. So that scares me.
Yeah, if you look at other cities, right? Well, I think it was Chicago that went bankrupt, right? And you start talking about pensions, nothing's guaranteed in this life, right? Other than what they say, death and taxes, right? So I mean, yeah, it could be taken from in a minute, you know. But I do want to mirror what you said. I mean, I believe yourself when you say surround yourself by more intelligent people than yourself, and you guys are much more intelligent than me because your experience, Sal, Marlon, and John, with their political inputs and all their experience, their computer skills, Eric, with your capabilities as a lieutenant and all the hard work that you did and all your knowledge. And John with his shirt off. I mean, I couldn't mirror that in 1,000 years. But and then you know, you got Ron, who did an outstanding job as a commanding officer in the precincts and moved up in the ranks, and also did a great job today, you know, behind the scenes and like you said, like Jack does all the time. So yeah, listen, it was an honor today to be with you guys. As far as politics go, I say, you know, get yourself behind somebody, a candidate that you know that can do the good job and that can win. And I personally feel like Sal does. I think Curtis is the answer. Don't get behind an Eric Adams. He's already lost. Look at it. Look at his polls. Look at everything that we've said. So I think you know, let's hope for the best. And we have 4 months, and now's the time to get behind the candidate that you think's going to win. Don't waste the 4 months that we have to get this together.
Listen, over a month ago there were polls, and Adams was polling behind everybody else. Even Curtis Lee were in a 3 or 4 man race. The big money, Marlon, is now, you can see it. They're lining up behind Zohran because he's representing the Democrat Party. So they're going to line up behind him. Eric is the MAGA guy. All those guys in New York City are far away from that. And right now, Trump has a problem with this Israel-Iran conflict, which is literally the real estate racket, all these different people. That whole, you know, apparatus is not too happy with what Trump's doing and what's going on there. Everybody's pulling in 50 million directions, and no one has the answer. You hope Trump can resolve this conflict, but he's on shaky grounds with everybody because of that, especially in New York City. So they're lining up behind whoever the Democrat candidate, which is Mamdani. And the Poly Market and all these polls that came out immediately after showed Cuomo on the bottom, but he never said he was out. Now you're hearing he's in. He's got an independent line. His name will be on the ballot. And whether he's serious or not, people will still vote for him. African Americans like him in New York City. They will vote for him. That will hurt Mamdani and Eric Adams, who Eric Adams, once again, I will reiterate, has no shot. You guys you're not electing a criminal into office. He does not have a chance. Everything, it's going to get worse for him. There's stuff that'll be out in the summer. Stay tuned. It's going to get worse for him. He should just get out while he can. Curtis has he has no record to run on, Curtis. He's got a clean record because he's never been out there other than everyone knows him. He's kind of like a Trump candidate per se, without all the histrionics surrounding Trump. And he's appealing to people in New York City. And his policies, you can read them. Some of them are really good. We could put them up here. I mean, I'm telling you, it's you're going to either want that or you want Mamdani. Cuomo is the middle guy where you want a steady hand. I don't know how serious he is because he's waiting to see the ranked choice voting, how that all went. But he's not dead in the water. And as long as he's in it, Curtis has as good a chance as anyone else. Remember, he's got 30% of the vote. 70% is now going to be split 3 different ways. Where in the world do you think he doesn't have a chance? You are making value judgments and running on emotions, and that's the failure of this country. You never do things based on emotions. You have to do things based on facts, and the facts are what I'm saying. And the first internal poll that shows this, you're going to see exactly where Curtis is with the other 3 candidates. Remember, though, it's 7-1 voter registration in New York City, Democrat to Republican. So don't lose sight of that. So when you hear Steve Bannon and his merry band of criminals around him telling you who you should vote for and what you should do, remember Trump, who has a 36% approval rating in New York City and dropping with this whole conflict. Trust me, that's what they're riding over in the city right now. What he says, when he says Eric Adams, only deters them away from him. So I would, if I'm a New York City voter, I would make a very informative decision. Of course, I'm a Curtis guy. I knew what he was going to do a long time ago, and now he's acting it out. So as long as he hits the pavement like Mamdani does, and he has been, he's got as good a shot as Mamdani. You know who doesn't have a shot? The criminal, Eric Adams. And Cuomo better wake up because he thinks he can win from his basement. That's not going to work either. So it's going to get interesting, but it's not the end of the world. But please, let's not do the ad hominem attacks. He's not a jihadi terrorist. This guy, don't say that kind of stuff. Beat people with policy. Don't beat them with personal attacks. You will drive people to that person by doing it. Americans, it's on record. They don't like that. They don't want to see that. It's not the WWE. That's entertainment. This is real life.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is real life. And that's, I just want to go over this comment real quick. Crazy107 says, you guys underestimate Mamdani. I think she's talking to people in the chat. Listen to John about Mamdani. So I just want to say, since John is not here today, I just want to defend him in the sense that I know what Crazy107 is saying, but there's a lot of people that have gotten the idea that John is supporting Mamdani. He's not supporting Mamdani. What he's saying is he ran a hell of a campaign and he's getting a lot of support, and he could be the mayor if the Republicans don't do the right thing and support Sliwa, or the independents and Republicans support Jim Walden. So John was right about that. That's really what it comes down to. So, and I think the point is what we heard earlier in the chat was on face value, and he actually sounds pretty good. And I'm not saying I'm voting for him, but I'm saying on face value, it's like, well, he's not corrupt. Okay. He's not going to spend a lot of money in the police department. He has other people helping out. It sounds good.
He's more disciplined.
What's that?
No, I say, he's more disciplined.
And he's more disciplined, right? So this is lipstick on a pig, right? So yeah, I think we went over a lot of good stuff here. So it's 2 hours and 45 minutes into it. A hell of a show, Friday Roundtable. I want to thank everyone from the Finest Unfiltered family. Ron's behind the scenes today doing a hell of a job. It's all experiment for us. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, today it took a village to actually get the show going. So we're all in on it, helping it out. So credit to John. John does a lot when it comes to the show by himself, working with StreamYard. So I'm glad that we got to do this today. Adams versus Mamdani. So let's get to our closing remarks. 2 hours and 45 minutes into it. I just want to say, since you put up Alien versus Predator, Marlon, that's pretty good. So unless that's the movie you go with, or maybe another movie title, if you had a movie title other than that one to describe this election, what would it be?
Ooh, Escape from New York.
Maybe somebody in the chat has a good movie title too. I don't know.
Yeah. Chat, post up your movie titles for this. Yeah. What do you think, Rob?
I would pick two movies. One, I think The Godfather. Everybody's killing each other. It's coming to the end now, so they're just going to be killing each side. Or I would say, I see what Samara Cohen just said. I was going to say that The Purge. We're coming to the Purge, man.
I got an easy one for you, because I use the song every time you hear Eric Adams or his cronies out there. Goodfellas, because in the middle, when everybody's getting picked up and you find dead bodies everywhere, that's the song. Layla, that's the song for the Crumbs administration. And that is the entire election is surrounded by corruption with this Eric Adams, who I think if you're an NYPD or if you're a police officer and you want to run for office, even me in the future, you're going to be put up against that guy forever. They're going to say, well, are you another corrupt guy like that mayor from New York City, that former cop? That's what people are going to say. Forever and a day, he has stained this country as one of the most corrupt, if not the most corrupt politician in the history of mankind. And that movie, it entails, it encapsulates Crumb. And John is working on a new chapter on that book, by the way, after Eric hiring a criminal to be a consultant and fires him all in one day. That's yesterday's news. So,
Eric, go ahead. You want to say it? I was going to say thank NYPD 8311, right, for coffee and donuts, as you guys say all the time.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
He watches our podcast too. He's a good friend. So yeah, thank you 8311. Charlie, he's on your show too, right? I think.
And so is Snake Plissken. Same thing. He gave us $4.99. Thanks for the. He says coffee and donuts. I like my espresso. Sorry.
There you go.
I gotta tell you, if there was a movie right now, I'd say it's Honey, I Blew Up the Kids, because I feel like it's a bunch of little kids right now running around like, oh, this is the guy, and they're all like trapped in this bottle. It's like, oh yeah. Good luck.
We couldn't write a better script. Eric, you can't write a better script. You would think what we're saying is a movie, but it's actual reality. You got a chief of department that's killed somebody, cheated on his taxes, sexual harassment. His goon is a deputy mayor. The mayor himself you lose count every second and something else. Then you got, I guess you want to call him a socialist that might become the mayor. Then you have a guy who not only sexually harassed people, but put people to die in nursing homes to run. And then the guy everybody says is crazy that has done none of this stuff. He's the one that can't win, the guy with the red beret, because we don't like his red beret. And Trump told us it's got to be the guy who's corrupt to win. Like that. That's a movie, but no, it's reality. That's the whole thing. That's reality. I don't know. It's a Black Mirror episode of that other show. We got some great movie titles here. End of Days, New Jack City, Citizen X, Police Academy,
Spaceballs.
Chinatown, Spaceballs 2,
Spaceballs.
Yeah, no one's got any good movie, any positive movies out. So, but listen. Thank you, everyone. Almost 3 hours. We appreciate you having the stamina to stay with us. Friday Roundtable. Of course, Monday, myself and Shirtless John will be back Monday for a podcast. I don't know if John's coming with a shirt. We'll see. Maybe he'll come with a tank top. I don't know what's going on. See how angry he is. So Monday we'll be back, of course. 8:05 live Eastern time. For me, it's going to be 4:05 in the morning. I'm in the great state of Alaska, the last frontier. So far, it's beautiful. Actually, the weather is awesome here. Tuesday, of course, check out Sal Greco. Sal will be back. Sal, I know you're going to be ready to go. There's a lot of information. This stuff's going to be hot for a while. And then Wednesday, of course, good chief here, Rob, no cash. And of course, Ron, who's behind the scenes, will give you the executive perspective. And, we got a hell of a week coming for you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. We appreciate the finest Unfiltered. Take us out. Thank you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.